right field. She is gone. In a year that has been so improbable, the impossible has happened. This one by Mattingly. Oh, hang on to the roof. Goodbye, home. Don Mattingly. Tuck waits one. Deep left field. Down the line. That ball is out of here. Out of here. And the legend
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Tablesetters covering all things Major League Baseball. As always, I'm Steve, joined with my tag team partner in the offseason, Devin. What's going on, man?
What's up? What's up? Welcome to episode 115, everybody. Thanks for being here. As always, we appreciate it. And don't tell us the season's over here. We're rolling right through. We've been giving you multiple episodes a week. The plan for the offseason is at least one a week, but the way it's looking right now, who knows? We might be on here more than once a week if there's reason to be. So if you're looking for a baseball show that is dedicated to getting weekly content, even when the players are no longer on the field, you're in the right spot.
For sure. Yeah, we're going to continue our drive into the offseason. We're going to be talking all things winter meetings when we get there. And the setup of this episode is really just previewing the landscape of the offseason. There's so much uncertainty out there. As Devin mentioned, we just closed the book on the 2025 season. We gave a big congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers and even bigger congratulations to Major League Baseball for what a World Series it was.
Yep.
Still buzzing off of that, if we're being honest. And baseball has to carry this momentum forward. And I think a lot of these sports are 12-month calendars. And I think if you're a diehard basketball fan or a hockey fan or a football fan, it never stops, especially with the connectivity we have on social media. And it feels like, we mentioned, a lot of the guys covering the teams and the girls covering the teams on a daily basis will get a little bit of a breather. Brady Farkas was mentioning this on his podcast. I just listened to his latest episode where he's talking about what the Mariners will be doing in the offseason. But at the same time, a lot of the content creators are kicking off because there's so much meat on the bone here. And part of this episode is really digesting the things that could happen, making predictions about what we want fandom-wise for our teams to do, but also what makes sense, because what we do know, Devin, is that all of these teams that took the field in 2025 will look in some way different, big or small.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a part of me that, don't get me wrong, I like when baseball's on the TV nightly, but the off season is kind of fun too. Like, there are lots of parts. I mean, what we're doing tonight, I've been looking forward to this all day, of like predicting free agency and having a little draft between the two of us, a little competition that we can kind of look back at throughout the off season. And before you know it, there's going to be some trades to talk about as well. I mean, I posted yesterday, at the beginning of the offseason last year, it was a lot of little Angels signings, whether it was Kyle Hendricks, Travis d'Arnaud, eventually Yusei Kikuchi. We didn't really get a big major one until Blake Snell to the Dodgers. I believe that was the first big signing. And we had some trades mixed in as well. So you just never know. And even though there's not that one giant fish in the ponds this year, like Ohtani, Soto the last 2 years, there's still a lot of big ones. There's an argument to be made that even though there's not the one big one, it might be a more collective pool than the last couple of years of talent there. And then, free agency will come and go. Before you know it, man, we're going to be talking about the WBC. We're going to have some great guests on here, and we're not going to spoil them, and I also don't want to jinx them, but we got some things lined up that we're trying to confirm that we're excited about. So bring it on, man. Let's go.
Yeah, we were talking about the growth we've seen from just season to season, and we are approaching our second offseason here, getting ready for all of it. And as Devin mentioned, a lot of the guests are freed up in the offseason. So we're shooting our shot with a lot of these guests, hoping to have repeating guests, of course. If you guys have listened to us for all 115 episodes, you guys are going to see some repeating faces, of course. We're going to try to get the perspective of the teams that they cover. But if you want all the information on what's coming up down the pike, make sure you follow us on social media, on IG and on X, at Tablesetters Pod. You can find us there. And also subscribe to YouTube at Tablesetters Baseball. Growing subscriptions over there. I see a lot of upward movement in views, which has been awesome. We don't really hype the YouTube up, but anywhere you can consume us and tell your friends about us, we appreciate it. We're happy to be part of furthering your fandom of baseball and keeping you company in this long, cold off season that we call the winter. So we're just getting started here and continuing, like Devin mentioned, weekly. We're going to be dropping episodes, sometimes multiple in 1 week.
Yeah, this is really still season 2 of Tablesetters when you really look at it as a whole. And our last episode, we jumped on right after Game 7 of the World Series, one of the best games of all time. And if you don't believe it, You can look at the pivotal plays list and see all the plays that were a part of that game that are on that list of CWPA, championship win probability added, and it speaks for itself. But we jumped on right after that, and it was cool. Since then we've seen ourselves chart in some maybe unfamiliar places, Finland, Denmark, Japan. So if anyone's listening in any of those countries right now, we really appreciate it. It's just pretty cool and reaffirming to see that people are listening to us all over the world at times. I mean, you can't imagine how good that makes us feel. So thank you for that, and hopefully you stick around for the long run here.
So no warming up at the bullpen here. We want to discuss before we set the stage for this free agent match draft that you guys came to hear, which is our main event for the offseason prediction game that we're going to design to test how well Devin and I can read the market. We're going to talk about Shane Bieber, and in a move that really caught most of the baseball world off guard, he declined free agency to stay in Toronto. He bypassed a $4 million buyout to guarantee another season with the Blue Jays. And we talked about him coming back from Tommy John surgery. He showed enough flashes of that pre-injury to reestablish himself as a mid-rotation starter. He was maybe looking to chase a multi-year payday. Seems like, Devin, he's opting for some stability and continuity to stay there. We saw 7 regular season starts. He posted a 3.57 ERA and 40 in a third inning with a 23.3% strikeout rate and just a 4.4% walk rate. 92.6 miles per hour on his fastball was average there, which was his best velocity since 2021. And of course, you can look at him pitching well overall, despite allowing that World Series clinching home run to Will Smith in extras. His command, the sequencing, the durability down the stretch really reaffirmed that elbow seems like it can handle a full workload again. So I think financially, this looks pretty conservative on paper, which a $12 million difference between the option and the buyout is well below market value of a pitcher of his caliber. So this is a pretty enormous win for the Blue Jays.
I was shocked by this. I thought at the very least he would opt out and maybe he'd end up back with the Blue Jays in a kind of reconfigured deal, a little more money, maybe another opt out there to just kind of prove he's healthy. We've mentioned that's a few times. Like, I could see him signing another short-term deal, but with a 1-year opt out. So if he had a great year, he could go get his money and not miss out on that opportunity. This has a trickle down effect possibly. And when we get to our draft of predictions, you may hear us reference this with some of the predictions we make. I mean, this might open some things up for the Blue Jays that they did not expect. And you look at the rotation. I mean, listen, Shane Bieber on his worst day is like a number 3 starter. On his best day, he's a Cy Young candidate. Like that's truly who he is. And I know he's still kind of has to prove himself a little bit here to show that he is the guy we remember even after injury. But I mean, the guy just pitched in the most competitive World Series we've seen in a very, very long time, held his own, obviously the Will Smith thing, you'll remember that, but had some really, really good moments there. I believe, he outdueled Shohei Ohtani in game 4, right? Like, these are the things that you need to remember about Shane Bieber. 16 million, again, great for the Blue Jays. Maybe there is, I've just read a lot, even after the loss, a lot about how special of a clubhouse that Toronto team has. Maybe it plays into that. Maybe he knew a little bit more about his market than we do, and he wasn't going to get a ton more money. I don't buy that though, man. I've seen predictions. I saw one where it was about 4 years for around 97 million. So you're making almost 25 million a year. That might be a little high and maybe a little too many years with his situation. The Athletic had him at 3 years, 63 million, a little more conservative, 21 million a year, but still more than the 16 million. And they also said that the deal could involve an early opt-out or two, which makes sense. It's another bite at the apple after a healthy season if he put it out there. But 16 million, any way you look at it, I think that is just an amazing number for the Blue Jays. They go into next season with Bieber and Trey Savage and Kevin Gausman at the top. I don't know if it's the best, but it's close to as good as any other top 3. And we'll see what's going on with Jose Barrios and his health and things like that. And we'll see if 16 million for Shane Bieber, you might be able to go get another arm or maybe keep a certain position player. We'll get to that at some point today as well.
Yeah, and I think with Bieber, you can think about the logic on his end and maybe the meetings he had with his agent talking about this. We mentioned the shortened stint he had that he's coming back from the injury. Maybe he just prefers another healthy full season before testing free agency, because if you look at 2026, it feels like he could stand out as one of the more proven veterans under 32, a guy that could be a strong possibility to get that final payday for his career, maybe long-term. And it also as you mentioned, maybe it is that he fell in love with Toronto and he wants to be a part of what they're building there, despite the changes we will see, because we know we'll talk about the Blue Jays when we get to this free agent match draft. They're going to be losing multiple veterans, or they have the chance to. And as you mentioned, this gives the front office room to pursue maybe re-signing Bichette, maybe getting some more bullpen reinforcements, maybe some more rotation reinforcements. It's a calculated play on his end, but it also sets up a more meaningful offseason for the Blue Jays. So we don't know what happens in those meetings, but all projections have Bieber being a productive member of this rotation going forward. Only 31 years old, and we know that, as we mentioned, all the metrics look like he could be a guy that was well deserving of more of a payday, but he's rolling the dice one more time. We're not going to sit here and say he's, going to be eating hot dogs and beans with $16 million, but still you're leaving millions of dollars on the table, which is still a risk in his mind.
Yeah, not many people go about it that way. For the Blue Jays, it's going to be an interesting offseason, man. I said recently, I feel like watching that team, and everybody in the world was watching that team. Basically, every baseball player that was eliminated was paying attention to it. I feel like Toronto might become a little more of a destination than we've seen. I mean, they already have top 5 payroll, so we know they can pay people. Toronto's a beautiful city, lots of great culture there. And to watch, I mean, people seem to love playing with Vladdy. And John Schneider, I thought, became a bit of a star, where he, I don't know, before this season, you'd probably call him almost a forgotten man as far as managers go. So I think there's a lot to like there. And I do wonder if people kind of are going to be clamoring to go play with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. over the next few years. But yes, they have a lot of money that is, dedicated to Vladdy, obviously. A pretty good chunk of change for your closer, Jeff Hoffman, which, depending on who you talk to, is a good thing or a bad thing. But then you also have some helpful contracts. And I'm not just talking about the Bieber one. I mean, think about how useful guys like Ernie Clement, Addison Barger, and Trey Savage are. And then look at what they're paying those guys. I mean, that's pretty nice to get those 3 guys and all the stuff that comes with them for the amount of money you're paying them to be Major League Baseball players. And I look at Addison Barger, man, a little bit of a man crush there, I think. I mean, I hope they let him play full-time next year, whether it be in the outfield, third base, a little bit of both. Let him hit against lefties. That guy's an absolute stud. And I think if you let him play 160, he's going to show you that the numbers are going to be there. I like what I see there a lot. I think the Blue Jays are in a good spot. Obviously, the Bichette thing looms large, but this is a great thing for the Blue Jays to begin the offseason.
Yeah, and we will definitely spend significant time talking about the Blue Jays, not just when news breaks about where Bo goes and what they do in the offseason, but I think it deserves a larger conversation about, one of these cold winter nights recording about how the Blue Jays and how they executed this year, how that changes the mindset of other teams out there. You mentioned them being in the top upper tier of payroll, but still the way they function, there's no reason why a small market team can't model their club of how they were able to offensively attack teams from all different angles. Because we mentioned those guys are out there if you're able to look through and find the silver linings of the Ernie Clements and the Addison Bargers and find these silver gems out there that are contributing at a big level. But like I said, we will talk about them in the offseason. If you're joining us live, we are going to be rolling out the free agent match draft, which essentially is an offseason prediction game designed to test how well Devin and I can read the market and some of our instincts, whether they're correct or not. It's going to see if we can forecast what these 2026 players' destinations will look like. So it's going to be really fun here. 15 rounds. We're going to be talking about 15 here. And essentially, we're going to be alternating picks, and then we're going to be doing a snake round, right? That's how we're going to be doing this here, which we're going to select a free agent where he's going to be signing for the 2026 season. And if we feel like it's important to add to the conversation, we can add the contract structure, the length and average AAV, if we feel like maybe for the upper tier, comparing it to last year's class, where it is there. But Devin and I are doing this with no coordination. I didn't see his notes. He didn't see mine. When a player is picked, that specific player team combo is off the board. So that's where the pivot comes in here. But you can still pick the player if you have him going to a different team. So we'll see where we go from here.
Right. And just to clarify that, if let's pretend Shane Bieber for a minute was a free agent still, just to use him. If I, with my first draft pick, said Shane Bieber to the Blue Jays, Steve could no longer say Shane Bieber to the Blue Jays. But if he wanted to say Shane Bieber to the Yankees, he could. That could be a draft pick because technically it is different. So you may hear both of us say the same names at some point. Steve has alerted me that he went a little off the what would you say? Not the deep end, not the rails, just a little
I
bit around
spent
the edges.
I spent some time today going through just comparisons of some of these players and putting teams together. I was diving deep into the books of some of these players, really, because like you look at the philosophies of some of these front offices, like the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Braves, and then you start digging into the mindsets of the Guardians and the Rays and the Mariners and how they do business. And then I also started losing my mind talking about the Cardinals and what they do, and like the Cubs have to
Yeah,
take the next step. There's so many teams that have been off the radar for a little bit here because
sure.
of the fact that we've been so focused on October baseball, meaningful baseball, but the teams that have fallen out of it, there's some big markets with passionate fans that are going to be looking for their teams to do something in this offseason to reignite the flame. Because as we know, as the winter thaw starts to come over us, there's hope that springs eternal when these winter meetings here, and you get some of these fan bases start to dream big, and you got to ignite them. You got to sell some season ticket packages. You got to get people back inspired, especially if you're a Cardinals fan. You're out there like, show me something, St. Louis. Let's do it.
I could I agree with you on that one, that's for sure. And you're right. As I went through these, I did start thinking about teams like, wow, I haven't thought about that team in a couple months. I'm very curious how they're going to approach this. So that's the fun part about this, is it brings up those conversations and those thoughts. And I'm treating this as a competition here, Steve. Like I went through my matches and put the ones I believe in at the most to try to pick early, unless you take them from me before I can get to them. And we're going to look back at this throughout the offseason and kind of keep track of the points that Steve and I are earning. And at the end, see who came out with more a few months from now, I guess. But we got to decide who's going first here. So I forgot to bring down a coin. I have a bag of M&Ms in my hand. Here's what I'm going to do, Steve. I'm going to give you 3 chances to guess the color of the M&M that I am going to pick out of the bag. If you get it, I'll give you the first pick. If not, I have to try to do it. I promise I won't look. So give me the first color here. I have an M&M in my hands. I haven't looked at it. What are you going with?
Well, joke's on you. I've eaten about 1,000 of those little baggies for the trick-or-treaters that didn't come to my house. So I'm going with yellow. It seems to be an inundation of colors with that M&M. So it's got to be yellow.
You gotta be kidding me.
It's
Look at that.
Man.
It's yellow.
I've seen a whole bunch of those.
Steve gets the first pick. I'm going to enjoy some M&Ms while he goes through it. And then I'll get the next 2 because we are snaking through this. So your first pick of the prediction draft, I guess, as we can call it.
Yeah, and just to be clear, when we were setting this up, the way I structured it was like this mega group, the premiers. Devin mentioned we don't have the Otanis or the Sotos of the world, but there is like a couple tiers of this where I'm not going to give you the names quite yet, but there's this mega AAV class as a second tier. And I think what we would talk about is this bounce back tier as well. There's some players out there that are looking to build on maybe what they did last year, or maybe they are looking for this short-term deal. But I'm going to go with my first pick here. And I feel like this team has to have a big come to reckoning and making their fan base believe. And that's the New York Yankees. Kyle Tucker to the New York Yankees. I think this is a true headliner of this offseason, a blockbuster, really in need of a facelift for this team to make them feel good. Obviously, the Yankees have spent the last few years chasing some balance, both in their lineup and their payroll construction. This is not George Steinbrenner's Yankees, but they've lacked really this another superstar to complement Aaron Judge, because Soto was there for a blip and then gone. We need another guy here. And I think Tucker, especially with the down year he had, he fits that bill perfectly because he's a lefty hitter with power. He has a pedigree that we've seen him be able to do this as a postseason pedigree to him. I know he has an injury history, but he's coming from a franchise that did a lot of winning before this. And you look at Tucker, I mean, he's not just another slugger to stick in front of that short porch. I think looking at the high contact quality, the selective aggression, the elite zone control, I think it fits both nature here. And then you get him bringing that Gold Glove caliber steadiness into whatever outfield position he will be playing. You got some flexibility to maybe rotate Judge through DH days without sacrificing defense. You get the OBP, the defense, the base running, all of that. The cost will be enormous, and I have it selected at 9 years, $372 million, which is a $41 million AAV. 9 years, nearly $400 million. Probably uncomfortable for Hal and Brian Cashman to sit there. But like I said, they need a reset. He's entering his prime. Hopefully he would be durable. And you have to stabilize this next version of this Yankees core and capitalize on Aaron Judge in his prime. So we have to go there. This is not a luxury right now. You have to correct a lot of the wrongs that happened here. And Kyle Tucker comes to the Yankees this year.
I mean, we've heard this out there as how, how well he fits. My thing with him is I the big contracts that the Yankees have added up, whether it be Aaron Judge, obviously, Max Fried, Garrett Cole, who, thankfully for you guys is coming back next year. Long-term, big contracts, big money. Carlos Rodon, you can even throw in there. You got to make a decision on Jazz Chisholm this year, I guess. So there's a lot of big contracts, which I'm a little skeptical with how un-George like Hal is sometimes. I do wonder if he green lights that. Your projection was 9 for, what'd you say, 372?
Which is 41 AAV, which I believe,
Okay.
if he would have had the year we were expecting, he probably could
Right.
have been closer to 5. But I think 372 is more than fair for a guy that is looking for stability.
Yeah, I mean, the Athletic has him at 10 years, 350 million, which I think is a little modest for him. But I mean, I think the Yankees would do that in a heartbeat, and I think some other teams would do that in a heartbeat. The one team that it sounds every day more and more like they're not going to do it is the Cubs. I've seen reports that they've already moved on, which is just shocking to me that they make that move and they'll just say, yeah, whatever, see you later. And I know some Cub fans, as I've said before, are actually kind of happy about that. They kind of felt Tucker wore out his welcome pretty quickly, but. All right, Kyle Tucker to the Yankees is the first overall pick here. Steve has that on the board. So if I include Kyle Tucker at some point in my top 15 picks, it'll be because I do not have him going to the Yankees. So stay tuned for that. I'm going to go with my number 1 here. And it's interesting. Again, we didn't plan this out, but I have a hometown pick as well. All right, so with my number 1 pick, the one that I am most confident with, Edwin Diaz is going to re-sign with the New York Mets. I do not believe this is a guy they can let go. The Pete Alonso thing, I'm very skeptical of, and whether I want him back or not. As the days go on, I really do feel like this is going to be a kind of strange offseason for the Mets. I think they will make some big moves, but I think it will be at the expense of Pete Alonso more than likely. The Edwin Diaz thing, I just do not think you can let this guy go. There was a report out there today that I don't like reading, and maybe that's why this is on the top of my mind here, where the Dodgers have basically, some insiders have admitted, yes, they're going to kick the tires on guys like Tucker and some of the top upper echelon guys, but they are way more likely to be super aggressive with a dominant right-handed closer. And that just screams Edwin Diaz almost without saying his name. And I hate to hear that. So, listen, teams have these 5 days that are almost over now to negotiate with their own free agents before they get out to the big pool. Nothing's gotten done with Diaz. I am a little concerned that the Dodgers could get, their fingers on him, but I do think he wants to be a New York Met, and I feel like the Mets will be able to keep him. So he is my number 1 pick here. And because we're snaking here, I'll go right to my number 2, and then we can reflect on both a little bit if we want to before we go to your second. My second pick, and this is interesting coming off of your choice. If you say Kyle Tucker to the Yankees, you got to believe that Cody Bellinger's gone. And I will agree with you here on that. Not necessarily because I think Tucker's going to the Yanks, but I have Cody Bellinger reuniting with those Los Angeles Dodgers. I know they let him go years ago. I think he has found himself again. He's a much better version than when he left there. Remember, he was an MVP there. And then after a couple of years, he completely flamed out. I believe he has found himself again. He's the ultimate athlete, if I'm being honest. This dude can do everything. And where's the only place that the Dodgers have really lacked for a few years now? It's the outfield, which is why the Kyle Tucker rumors have started. I just think Bellinger is more likely here. They know the dude. They know he's a great clubhouse guy. They know everything about him, right? They brought him up. So I think this is a slam dunk. Cody Bellinger back to Los Angeles.
Very interesting. I know that you've been very vocal about the reunion we might see with the Dodgers and Bellinger for sure. And I think it does make sense. And we heard a lot of conversation in the wake of this Dodgers World Series win and talking about what 2026 looks like because no rest for the weary. And Eno Saris, who I love the Rates and Barrels podcast and a lot of stuff he does for The Athletic, he was obviously congratulatory towards the Dodgers, but very, very down on them in the future, talking about how old they got and that all these contracts are going to start to put them in a position where you have a logjam. And they have to make a little bit of a change too, because despite them winning the World Series and being pushed to the limit, it wasn't like they were firing on all cylinders. There was a lot of holes in that lineup throughout that World Series that eventually they got the timely hits. But if you look at the offense, it was solo shots. And yes, they are world champions, so you're nitpicking. But this wasn't this explosive offensive affair that we're used to seeing with the Dodgers. And they might have to look like maybe move on from Andy Paz from being the guy that they thought he was in the beginning of the season and Bellinger is that answer. So I do enjoy that. I had Bellinger on my list, but he was not going to the Dodgers. So I'm able to kind of pull Bellinger back in my picks and like kind of push him back. So very, very interesting. And then as far as the Edwin Diaz, I think that's the perfect fit. I mean, he'll be well sought after, and we know the shelf life on closers certainly does have an expiration date, but feels like he's just hitting the peak right now. All the velocity is up there. Feels like he obviously not the issue this year for the Mets. He was able to go out there and be pretty consistent for him, especially if you go back to his first year where how unstable it was. I feel like it was going to be a marriage that was going to be ending in divorce pretty quickly, but he's established himself as a pretty trustworthy arm for the Mets in the last year or two, you know?
Yeah, he had that 2022 years when he peaked and he was fantastic, unhittable. He looked a little more like that this year. He had his moments where he looked like bad Edwin Diaz too, but for the most part looked like good Edwin Diaz. That year he came back after the WBC injury. Velocity was a little down. It took him a while to kind of look like the guy we remember, but he really did last year. I think the question for Diaz is not so much AAV. The dude's got to get over 20 million a year. When you think about Tanner Scott getting 20 million a year last year, like I think Diaz has to get more than that, right? The only question is years. I mean, the Athletic projects him 4 years, 84 million. There's definitely a chance that he gets the 5th year there, and that puts it over the top for whoever offers it. And it's interesting that they wrote in the last line of their projection for Diaz kind of what I just said. It wouldn't be a surprise if, like last time, he re-signed with the Mets before free agency formally opened. Well, we don't have that many hours left. 5 p.m. on Thursday is when we're starting here. So that's the projection for Diaz. And then Bellinger, I believe they had him at 7 for 182. All right. So, I mean, that's a lot of years for Cody Bellinger. If you told me 2 years ago, let's say, that Cody Bellinger would get a 7-year contract, I'd say you're out of your mind. What are we, like time traveling backwards here? But he really has impressed people. He's versatile. He can play a lot of different places if you need him, and he's good everywhere. Great defender. I was perusing Fangraphs recently and was shocked to see how low his K percentage was. I think just the eye test can fool you sometimes because he has such a violent big swing that when he does strike out, it looks bad and it just makes you think, oh, this guy must strike out a lot. Really doesn't. So I think any team would be excited to add Cody Bellinger right now, and I think he's going to have a pretty big market as far as the amount of teams that are going to be in on him.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say about just the Bellinger piece, you can look at George Springer and his renaissance this year, even Javi Baez. You really can't write these players off because I think that eventually you look at some of these deals and maybe you say that it was a bad deal, or like the Springer, if you would have asked someone a year and a half ago, would you agree with the Blue Jays signing Springer? They probably would have said, no, that was a bad signing, but I think it's worth the money now to get them to the World Series and how good he was. And I mean, they almost built a statue of him outside. That's essentially, as we sit here and judge deals, you have to wait to the end of them. And that's what the risk you take with some of these deals, which kind of leads me into my next one here for my second pick, which is Pete Alonso. And there's been a lot of conversation with the Polar Bear, and he did change his profile picture the first time ever. And I do have him departing the friendly confines of Flushing, Queens, going to San Francisco for 7 years, $231 million with a $33 million AAV. So after 2 off seasons, I mean, the 1 year prove it, the bridge deal, the short-term reunion with the Mets, I think he finally gets his long-term home. The Giants are desperate for a right-handed middle of the order identity. They want to complement Rafi Devers. They make the aggressive moves that really marries this offensive necessity to the market timing. They're sick of being 500, and Buster Posey has shown that he's being aggressive. But if you look at 2025 for Alonso, it's time for him to capitalize. So unless the Mets want to go up and pony up some of this money here, which I feel like they have a little bit of cold feet for this as well. But I think we saw what we needed to see from him. 38 home runs, if I have it correct, 41 doubles, 126 RBIs. He became the all-time home run leader with 264 for the Mets. This is an all-time player for the Mets here. He proved that that bat speed hadn't slipped. We had thought that was the case here. His power still plays everywhere. And you look at the durability, he is an elite player when it comes to staying on the field. And most importantly, he shed that shadow of these qualifying offers, and he enters this free agency with, there's no draft pick penalty now. There's no hesitation from the suitors here. I think for the Giants, they've been looking to transform this lineup for pretty much half a decade. And Oracle Park, kind of synonymous with kind of reducing power, but they rework the power alleys now. They reward right-handed loft. And I think his game does fit it. The high launch angles, the optimized pull power. If you look at some of the advanced stats, Devin mentioned Fangraphs before, there's the ability to carry velocity deep in San Francisco, how the salt air carries, all of that. And defensively, it's what he's always been. He's serviceable, not exceptional. Devin and I talked about this on here. The eye test feels like he's better than the numbers say he is. I'm pretty sure he has a negative F-WAR, which is fine, but I think the Giants can live with that because they're pitching their defensive structure. I think that can absorb an at-bat first baseman that's going to be there. And for them, I mean, the contract, I think, has to be this money here. This is going to be his long-term home. And I think it's comparable to Marcus Semion's deal, Matt Chapman's deal. He has to get paid now. This now or never. And I think for him, pairing Devers and Alonso, it's sort of this overlook of, let's not forget the Giants want to beat the Dodgers too. And they have to do it maybe bat first. And I have him going to San Francisco. That's my second pick.
So I'd push back a little bit and you give me a response in this because maybe you've already thought about this here. The only reason I'm super skeptical of that matchup is the following. So you have Matt Chapman at third base, great defender. He's been really good in San Francisco, which means Rafi Devers is either playing first base or DHing. Okay, yep. So if Pete comes here, you're saying he's playing first, but then that leaves superstar prospect, or I shouldn't say superstar, but super prospect Bryce Eldridge without a home. This dude is a top 10, top 15 prospect, number one prospect in San Francisco. They brought him up at the end of last year. He's ready now. You're not sticking him in AAA, stuck behind Devers and Pete. So in your mind, is this another chess piece where you bring Pete in and you use Eldridge to go strengthen the team elsewhere via trade?
For sure. I think the market, and we probably will do an episode dedicated to it, but I think the Giants will be in on a Tarek Skubal conversation. They're going to be in on any pitcher that's out there. And what package could be topped with a Bryce Eldridge? I think if you have the ability to pay him and trade and sign, if the Tigers walk away at Bryce Eldridge and can add that pop to the lineup, I feel like that would be a huge piece for them. But I think you have to kind of sign the players and fit them together, kind of like what the Dodgers have done in the past. Get these guys in place and figure out where it goes, because you can't account for the fact that injuries have been there. But I believe you have to bring the best players in. And I think Pete Alonso's swing does match up with San Francisco and the aggressive. Because again, 82 and 82 or 81 and 81 for the last couple of years, that's not good enough for the Giants. They have to go out there and do something aggressive that could be something disastrous. We could be looking at this deal being like the worst deal in the Giants' history. But at the same time, it could be a boom or bust situation where Pete kind of has that dog in him a little bit, that he can go out there and play these big games against LA. You need that in this lineup.
Yeah, and Tony Vitello is going to want dudes in that lineup, and Pete's definitely a dude. I could see that working, that relationship there. All right, give me your next one because we're snaking here, so it's your time for two in a row.
So my second pick here in well, I should say third pick, but my second in a row here would be Alex Bregman. We know that he opted out of his Red Sox contract. I have him signing with the aforementioned Detroit Tigers on a 5-year, $160 million contract. Officially opted out. He walked away from 2 years, $80 million, which includes that $40 million in deferred money. And I think at this point, they were will they, won't they? We've Bregman and the Tigers were tied at the hip. We felt like they were already there. And at 32, he still proved that he's a legitimate middle of the order presence. Championship tested, a clubhouse leader. And they were in on him last winter. And I think they were exposed this year. They need a anchor in that lineup. Some of these young players weren't able to carry the load. And I think he fits perfect. It's almost too good to be true. I feel like by your reaction, you had him there going as well.
Yeah, I had him a little later in my draft, and I did convince myself that he's leaving Boston and going to Detroit. It's their second shot at him. So not a lot to add there. Basically, I'd reiterate everything you said. I do think this is the fit there. I'll bring it up really quickly here to make sure I have it right. But their production at third base was not great as a team. And it just screams like help. And the other thing is with Bregman, like that leadership that we saw him with some of the young Boston guys, I think is a super important thing to mention, because Detroit, yeah, they're already a playoff team, but they're going to be bringing up some kids relatively soon. I mean, Kevin McGonigal, guys like that, to have to play with an Alex Bregman for a few years or whatever it may end up being, I think that that could be a pretty big deal. So I'm going to look at the third baseman, just wars here. I looked at it earlier. It was not great, but all right. So as a team, yeah, I mean, they're the third worst here. It's not great. The WRC plus from third base, dead last. 24 WRC plus for third baseman. on the Detroit Tigers. So I think it's a clear fit, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the way the Tigers the season ended for them. Tell me they couldn't use Bregman's bat at some capacity. And yes, if you look at these deals, and I have Bregman's deal being slotted at 5 years, maybe you regret that last year in the deal, but still, if it gets you with this window, if we're talking about will they, won't they, if we feel like they're going to trade Tarek Skubal, if you want to get one more run at him this year, it's now or never. And at the very least, building this team, like you mentioned, the intangibles of an Alex Bregman bring something that can't be measured as far as production on the field. He's going to be mentoring these players, a lot of the young players there. You mentioned McGonigal. I think that's a huge piece to what it's like to be a ball player on a daily basis. And Bregman brings that in spades. He's been doing it for a long time at a high level, playing with a compete that can't be compared to a lot of players that we've seen in the history of baseball. He's won everywhere he's been.
Yeah, it's 100% correct. Now, if there was a small part of me that almost stopped myself from doing that matchup and saying, I think he'll end up back in Boston. But I don't know. The more I read about Boston, I do think they're going to be aggressive to try to build on what they did. And they're going to come up for me a little later. And I have a little connection that I feel like makes a lot of sense with the type of team they have right now with a guy like Roman Anthony and the on-base percentage and what they could use. And you're reading some tea leaves, too, because there was a Tristan Casas post a day or two ago that was a little cryptic that made people think he might be on his way out, but we'll save some of that. I'm going to my third pick here, I think, so I'll do my third and fourth back to back. We're going to go back to San Francisco for a minute where you just left with Pete Alonso going there. So I'm going a little different direction. I do think Buster is going to continue trying to be aggressive here, but I kind of think he's going to move to the pitching side of things. So there's a guy that, to me, I think Buster Posey it would be excited about. Remember, Buster Posey played with Madison Bumgarner, a dude that went deep into games, just bulldog, would take the ball whenever you needed him to take the ball and give you innings. Framber Valdez, out of the pitchers that are on the market, he's that kind of dude. Now, I know some of the last memories we have of him in Houston are not great with him, seemingly purposely hitting his catcher and crossing his catcher up, things like that. Having kind of a mean mug on his face a lot, didn't look happy down the stretch. With that being said, if there's a guy that can make him buy in or two guys that can make him buy in, Buster Posey, Tony Vitello seem like a pretty good duo there. And I think when Buster looks at Framber Valdez, he sees that Madison Bumgarner type of guy. I'm not comparing the two and saying they're exactly the same. So I have Framber Valdez landing in San Francisco. The Athletic has him at 4 years, $116 million. What do you think of that fit, the two of them?
I do like it. I have Framber going elsewhere, but I do believe that we're talking about just this tier of free agent and not led by this superstar. And there is a little bit of uncertainty with pretty much all of these players. There's nothing certain about this free agent class at all. I think if you want to make a buzz and you have the ability to have, we use the verb being a dog out there or having the ability to have someone you can rely on, I think it's a good fit. I do think that all these players benefit from this not top heavy aspect of not having the Otanis or the Sotos of the world, where a lot of these guys, the market's going to be what it is, and you have to pay these players for what they are. And sometimes these guys are going to get paid a little bit further with the forward look for these teams that they got to field these teams in the best possible scenario.
No doubt about it. And when you think about it, imagine, when I think of two guys I've liked having on my fantasy teams in the past several years because they go long and can give you some complete game points. Two guys I think of immediately are Framber Valdez and Logan Webb. Having those two guys at the top of rotation to eat up innings and kind of give the bullpen a little break once in a while is a pretty appealing thought. And if Robbie Ray is right, having him there too, I think that's what Buster's looking at next. I think he's built the offense a little bit, right? It looks better on paper, at least, than what it did the last several years. That's not to say I don't think they're going to add any offense. I think they could, but I think pitching is going to be their first look here. And if I go to my next pick, we'll talk about offense here. Kyle Schwarber is my next pick here, and I have him dipping his toe in the water of a few different places, maybe thinking about playing towards home in Cincinnati if they actually get the balls to offer him something decent. But I think ultimately he stays in Philadelphia. I do not think, kind of similar to the Diaz thing with the Mets, I just don't think this is the guy they're going to let go. I do think the Phillies are going to have a couple guys walk away this offseason. I do not think it's Kyle Schwarber. We saw tears in his eyes in that last game when they were eliminated I think he likes it there. I think he would like to finish his career there. 33 years old. Look for him to get something around a 5-year deal with a very healthy AAV. The Athletic has him at 5 for 145. I could see it. I think he ends up back in Philly.
Yeah, I had him returning as well. I do believe the Phillies have to cherry pick who they want. And what we saw from Schwarber, it kind of goes with my next pick here, because we went in episode 99 and we did this whole debate about Ohtani versus Schwarber for the MVP. And I think Schwarber will get some votes for 2025 in the campaign he had. I think Shohei is going to run away with the award. But in the same breath, they have to be able to look at, we didn't look at his season being just a home run bridge. I think he became one of baseball's most reliable run producers. And obviously we prize versatility and athleticism. He thrives on being unapologetically one-dimensional. He's the best pure hitter in baseball, not named Shohei Ohtani. I think, or I mean, maybe the National League player. I'll put myself out there saying with Aaron Judge, but there's something different about his swing. He led the National League in home runs, the RBI percentage. He's right. He's earned the right, I should say, to cash in and be able to get paid and be the guy you build around. I've seen a lot of reports that the Yankees will be interested in him. And I mentioned before when I led this conversation off with Kyle Tucker, the Yankees will be aggressive. I think they're not going to leave any stones left unturned because of the fact of the way that the season ended and looking at the Blue Jays. And trust me, there's some embarrassment of losing to your division rival in that way. And essentially being embarrassed 2 years in a row. And yes, you won the pen and got to the World Series and lost in such a big way against the Dodgers, but being essentially torn apart by your division rival, the Blue Jays, who's supposed to be quote unquote lesser than, there has to be some pride for the Yankees front office. And I would imagine they're going to kick the tires on a Schwarber, but the reunion feels like it's too good to be true. That ballpark just fits perfectly for Schwarber and what he's able to bring to the table. So I do like that pick on your end. I have him at 5 years, 150. What did you have, Matt? What did the Athletic have, Matt?
The Athletic man at 5, 145. So, what's $5 million or $1 million a year, I guess, at that point. But
exactly.
Right,
so I did tie this with, you did 2 in a row, right? Already?
I did 2 in a row. Yeah. I took Framber to San Francisco. Schwarber stays in Philly.
So I mentioned episode 99 where we had the debate Ohtani versus Schwarber, but in the same conversation, we asked ourselves the conversation, is Bo Bichette a superstar? And I think the season he had this year, I think he erased at least the doubt that the slump we saw in 2024, maybe that was the true player. We watched this slash line 311, 357, 483. Missing him was a huge deal. Him being compromised with the injury was a big deal for the Blue Jays. You can't convince me otherwise. 181 hits this year, 44 doubles, 18 home runs, 94 RBIs, and 139 games. When you look at the MLB best as far as production from an infield position, he finished just 3 hits shy of Bobby Witt Jr. for the league lead. The knee injury sidelined him for the final 20 games. And he returned gritty to the World Series, playing through the pain. He tried his best to get out there. Toronto was within 1 run, maybe 1 pitch of winning the championship. And 28 years old, this is the year he circled to be like, I'm going to get paid. And I have him going to the Cubs. 7 years, $203 million, $29 million AAV. Bo Bichette's exactly what they're looking for. He's durable. He's relentlessly consistent and quietly elite at the things the Cubs have lacked since their 2016 core began to fracture. Don't forget, the Cubs, too, felt a certain type of way about being eliminated quietly from the playoffs. Obviously, the shortstop market is paper thin this winter. The Cubs are going to seize the opportunity to pay with full freight on a guy that's contact driven, by all accounts, high character cornerstone, and he can really anchor the top of their order and evolve with this roster. Because let's not make a mistake about it. This is a roster that wants to win right now. And I think Bo Bichette is going to help them push the chips in the middle of the table.
2 questions for you. Mm-hmm. Number 1, I want to see if you agree with me. I agree with you. The group of shortstops that are in free agency is weak. It's weak. I don't see Bo Bichette being signed to play shortstop. I think he gets a nice deal, but I think whoever signs him is going to want him to be second baseman. And I think he'd be better off for it. But the fit in Chicago, although I like it in the lineup, I'd have to ask you got Dansby Swanson at shortstop, Nico Horner, fantastic at second base. So what are we doing with those 2 guys?
I think right now he has the athleticism to he's played shortstop. Obviously, we look at the F-WAR. It's not as great as you want it to be, but I think the structure, as you talk about with Dansby and Nico, it allows for some creative usage in the meantime. And you can look at Bichette seamlessly shifting to second or third later in the deal. I think in the first year, maybe you have him there, but you have the prospects out there to continue to develop. Kevin Alcantara, all these other players out there that are going to be infield prospects that you have the flexibility going out there. And you have to recognize, and we talked about with Alonso, he's looking to get paid in a prime age, similar to how we have, Correa or Seager, these guys got paid, and he wants to get paid right now. And I think for the Cubs, it matches up because the signal of intent of winning. You have to be able to get out there and show your fan base we're ready to go. And I mentioned the pride factor of what the Brewers did to that division this year. If you're a Cubs fan or if sitting in that Cubs front office, you have to go out there and build on what we saw from PCA. Can they put this complete offensive structure in place for the first time and put this World Series contender? Because what we saw at the end of the year, they fizzled out big time. I think Bo brings a consistency that they were missing.
Bo is going to bring consistency to somewhere. I will say that. I'm excited to see where he goes. And as a Met fan, and this is just an aside, it really doesn't have anything to do with our predictions, but I the whole year watching baseball, I never had the thought of Bo Bichette to the Mets, but I've seen it put a few places recently of predictions, and it excites me. I would love to see Bo Bichette in blue and orange, and I think he would fit the lineup fantastic. But to be honest, I don't know if there's any lineups he wouldn't fit very well in. It's just a matter of like, is shortstop or second base available? And if it's not, what are we doing to fit him? But all right, so your number 4 pick, Bo Bichette, to the Chicago Cubs. Go ahead and give me your number 5.
So I'm pairing this with the Bo Bichette news here, and Toronto has to make a postseason or a post-Bo world move here. And I have them adding Gleyber Torres to the fold here to stabilize this core and replace Bo's production without sacrificing the long-term flexibility on their end. I have the Blue Jays doing more in this, so I will talk about what they've done. But Torres, I mean, I like what he brought to the table. Obviously, Vlad Jr. and Dalton Varsho are bringing what they bring to the table, but they're going to need offensive balance in this lineup through the middle of the order. And you look at the 2025 campaign, he showed that, I mean, he could be one of baseball's most consistent middle infield bats when he's right. He has some legitimate pop. We saw him do that with the Yankees. He had showed a decent amount of improved plate discipline. And he also, we talked about versatility. He can play both second and third, depending on the team construction. And we talked about the Blue Jays endlessly about them emphasizing run production and stability after years of this lineup sort of going through volatility of who's going to play and who's not. I think Torres does check a lot of boxes for him. He averages about 145 games per season. His at-bat, his bat plays in any park. I think his swing is built for line drives. You can talk about right center and opposite field power that should drive and thrive in Rogers Center if you're thinking about it. And I also think with Torres sliding naturally into number 2 or number 5 spot with Bo Bichette not being there, his defensive metrics, I think it's better than Bo. They have leveled out since his early career. It's gotten better for sure. He's an above average second baseman. He's serviceable at third. I've watched him for a long time playing with the Yankees. Expect Torres to open 2026 as a second baseman, but it could move around too. I think the Blue Jays have shown willingness to kind of put guys where they fit. And beyond the numbers, I think they're trying to keep this window open. And we talk about Bieber, that does add some flexibility. It's not the sexiest name out there, but as I mentioned, you have to fill a void that has been missing if Bo does leave.
Yeah, I mean, I if Bo is gone from Toronto, I don't mind that pivot. I don't mind that pivot at all. I know Gleyber before this year, when he took the 1-year deal with Detroit, was kind of very open about like, listen, I'm trying to kill it this year and look for that $100 million deal. Like, he was very open about that. I don't know if he's getting that, but to go play in a place like Toronto with Vladdy and those guys, not a bad spot for him. I just want to correct something really quickly while my mind's on it. I just noticed, we like to be transparent on here. When I was talking about the Tigers and the production they got from third base, I was looking at the postseason metrics. So I switched that really quickly just to check myself. So 1.1 FWAR from the third base position during the regular season, 76 WRC plus, still towards the bottom of the league. But I wanted to make sure if anyone heard those numbers and were scratching their heads, that's why. So yeah, the Gleyber Torres in Toronto, second base, makes a lot of sense. It kind of reminds me of the pivot that Arizona did last year when they lost Christian Walker to Houston. They seemingly immediately made that trade for Josh Naylor and covered that position with a really reputable player. Honestly, at this point, better player than Christian Walker. So I'm not saying Gleyber Torres is going to go on to be a better player than Bo Bichette, but I think that's a solid pivot. Letting a guy go and then just not really doing anything about it is one thing, but going and getting another pretty solid player, I think, takes a little bit of the bad taste out of the fans' mouths.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if we look at the way these teams are constructed, they're trying their best to just pass the baton and fill a void. If you're looking at these numbers on a paper, Glaber's not Bo Bichette, but I think you can kind of fill it out with the aggregate of constructing this team that showed was more than capable of picking up the slack elsewhere. So I think we're moving on to your sixth pick, if I have the numbers correct.
Let's see. I had so far I've gone Edwin Diaz to the Mets, Cody Bellinger to the Dodgers, Framber to the Giants, Kyle Schwarber to the Phillies. So this is my fifth and then my sixth pick back to back here. All right. So with pick number 5 for me, we're going back to Chicago to Wrigley Field. The Shota Imanaga thing is fascinating. I do not count me as one of the people that is surprised that all of that went down. Now, I will say, as we sit here tonight, they do still have the opportunity to put forth the qualifying offer. But if you read the tea leaves, it doesn't sound like that's going to be something they want to do. But who knows? Even if they do it, that doesn't mean Shota's got to take it. Around 20-something million there. I'm not going to sit here and talk about Shota and where he's going, because to be honest, I'm super confused with where his market might be. I know a lot of people are just trying to connect him to the Dodgers because a lot of Japanese pitchers are there. That might be a little short-sighted or a little too easy. But I'm going to bring another pitcher, because if you lose Shota, the Cubs need starting pitching here. There's already been some reports out there that Ricketts is not going to play at the top of the market, and Cubs fans are already annoyed. So you got Tucker leaving, Shota's leaving. You better do something. All right. The fact that it still sounds like they may act a little small or mid-market has to be frustrating to their fans. But a guy I could see them bringing in here is Zach Gallen. I'm going to have Zach Gallen signing with the Chicago Cubs. He turned it around in the second half, looked a lot more like the guy we have come to know over the last several years. And if you put him in that rotation and hopefully get good Zach Gallen, and you get a healthy Justin Steele, and Matthew Boyd can prove that last year's Matthew Boyd was not a joke. I mean, and Jameson Taillon is going to be steady and sturdy for the most part. I think you have a decent rotation. Do I think it's good enough to go take the NL Central back? I think it at least gives you a chance with an offense that is still very, very good, and a Milwaukee team that, who knows, might lose Freddie Peralta, although it's Milwaukee and they figure it out every time. But I like the idea of Zach Gallen to the Chicago Cubs. It's interesting because when you look at the metrics here, you look at the numbers, 3.83 ERA from their starters last year. It's not bad, but there's just something about it where you look at it on paper and you just don't feel like it's going to be a World Series team if the rotation is as it is now. Maybe a playoff team, but I think Zach Gallen is a nice piece to add here. I don't think it's enough, but I have a feeling they're going to disappoint some fans in the offseason. But let's give him Gallen. That's my next one.
No, for sure. I think that is a very serviceable pick here. I think it's something you need to do. And we know Wrigley Field is tough to pitch in if you're not well poised and you're able to do that. But Zach Gallen has shown that he's been a guy that's shown up to the moment. And we can't forget that. There's some of that pedigree that comes with a pitcher that, yeah, has he won a World Series? No, but he's pitched in big games in big moments and he's been there. So who do you have for your sixth pick?
All right, so we're going back to my boy Pete Alonso, and this one hurts my heart a little bit, as you see with the hat on here. Diehard Mets fan, if you're new to the show. If you're not, you know that. This is not me saying that I don't think the Mets are interested at all. This is not me saying that I don't want him back. As everybody said, if we lose him, it's pretty tricky to just find 35 to 40 home runs and 120 RBIs to make up. With that being said, I do think the Mets are going to be heavily involved in the Tarek Skubal trade conversations. I do think they could sign a free agent pitcher. The Bo Bichette thing I know sounds crazy, but if they're moving a bunch of young talent in a deal for pitching, second base might be open. I think Pete gets away. I think the Mets pivot to a different direction here. And I know for nostalgic reasons, it's going to hurt if Pete is not here. But I think they are going to go in a different direction. Not necessarily because they dislike Pete, but because they like some other ideas. With that being said, I do think Pete has a pretty good market, as you said earlier, a much better market this time around than he did last season. I look at like the production he had and then the production that Kyle Tucker had and Bichette had. And I think to myself, why shouldn't Pete Alonso be a $30+ million player a year? The team that I actually love this fit, even though I wouldn't like to see him out of blue and orange, the Boston Red Sox. You plug this dude at first base, which means you're probably moving on from Tristan Cassis. But you put Pete Alonso at first base, that slug. And yeah, you're probably letting Alex Bregman go in that case. I think Pete fits better. Whether he's playing first base or DHing, by the way, right? You could do that. Roman Anthony and his on-base percentage, and then you get Pete to mash him in, and all these other guys that can do the things that bug other teams, get on base. I just think they need that slug in there, and I love I don't love it really as a Met fan, but if I'm looking at how it would go for the Red Sox, I love the fit.
I can see him in the uniform. That's the other thing. I try to, with these free agent destinations, you try to picture them in the uniform. And like when I was thinking about Bo, maybe it's the Blue Jays with the Cubs. I thought about that, but I could also see Pete rocking the Red Sox jersey. Can't you just see him in the yellow alternate jerseys that they wear? I can just see it.
Yeah. I mean, listen, 324 on base percentage as a team last year. I mean, I love the idea of adding a little slug to that on base. And their slug wasn't bad last year, to be honest. 421, good for 9th in the league. Add Pete Alonso to that, you're looking pretty good. Because let's be honest, when they traded Rafi Devers away, they did pretty well, but you did lose that slug. You put a Pete Alonso in there, and you're looking pretty good.
Yeah, Pete Alonso to the Red Sox definitely seems like it's something doable. I think we both are of the belief that he is exiting the Mets franchise, and I guess we could have that conversation on a later date. Where does he fit as far as the algorithm of the Mets? Are they retiring his number when it's all said and done? I guess you have to let the career play it out and see how it goes. But I'm going to go, and I'm surprised we haven't gone with this pick here for I believe this is my 6th pick if I'm keeping count over here.
This should be your 6th. I'll double check for you. So you had Bo to the Cubs. What was after Bo to the Cubs? What was the last one?
Gleyber to the Jays. I had.
All right. So yeah. So this will be number 6 and 7 that you're going to.
So I'm surprised this wasn't a pick because it almost feels like a predetermined outcome that we're going to be having a reunion with Josh Naylor going and staying with the Mariners. 4 years, $84 million, puts him at $21 million with an AAV. Played 54 games with Seattle. I mean, this was the heartbeat for them. 299, 341, 490 /line, 9 homers, 33 RBIs, 19 stolen bases. Yes, that's correct. 19 stolen bases. We talked about it a lot on the show. One of the more unlikely base running weapons for the Mariners came out of Josh Naylor. He became really the spark that their offense lacked. A left-handed hitter that could hit velocity, grinded bats, and deliver in leverage, and then also add in his 304 career average to T-Mobile, and it's easy to see why the fit felt pretty inevitable, as I mentioned from day one. I think this 4-year, $84 million deal fits with what the Mariners would be comfortable with. It does reward Naylor's prime year reliability without tying payroll up into that decline phase. Inevitably, we will see with a Josh Naylor type of player. It's club-friendly, fair AAV for a player who combines that thump that we just talked about, and we talk about his combination in that lineup with Cal and Julio and JP Crawford, those guys. He was able to balance that lineup. And beyond the stats, we talked about Bregman's intangibles. Naylor also brings an intangible that features a lot here. Teammates rave about his energy. The guy's yelling always, pounding his chest, all of that. He breathes life into whatever clubhouse he's in. And obviously, if you play against him, you don't like him. But he's a guy that is, they're historically have struggled to attract offensive free agents. That connection matters. There was a Seattle executive came out, Devin, and talked about this. They talked about how he wanted to be here and how that makes a difference. And I think from a baseball operation lens, re-signing him makes sense because you look at the internal options at first base. It's Ty France, Ryan Bliss, and some corner prospects. Like, you're not going to replicate the offensive balance or his left-handed bat. Letting him walk, to a division rival potentially, like if you're looking at other teams out there, someone's going to want his services. Their offense was criticized during the year for being too boom or bust. And I think he's a professional hitter. We talked about the clutch DNA, this edge he brings to the table, and they have to do something to feel like they're building on the success of last year. And it's not about going elsewhere. This guy's in-house. You have him. He's played there. Bring him back, Josh Naylor, to the M's.
Yeah, that match was literally my next pick. was literally my next pick. So that's the second one you took from me, which is why I came up with more than 15 to make sure I knew a few of them would get taken. Yeah, this is just, quite frankly, the one they have to get done. And I've been pleasantly surprised at the early reports coming out of Seattle that apparently that front office plans on being uber aggressive this offseason. I mean, you think about it, and this goes for Toronto too, and that might come up for me in a minute. Going deep in the playoffs and all that stuff and selling out, having these packed houses, your revenue is doing pretty damn good, man. That revenue number for those two teams might be higher than it has been in previous seasons. This is the year to go increase that payroll and build on all the goodwill that you've created and try to take the next step, even though you're so close. Naylor's going to have a market, dude. Like, there's going to be other teams that are going to be very, very interested in his services.
I'm curious what the Athletic has him at, because
I'll take a look. Just while I'm looking, I wanted to say before I forget to speak on the rumors of aggression from the Seattle front office. I heard their name saying they would be involved in the Tarek Skubal sweepstakes, which to me, it's like, what team doesn't need Tarek Skubal? The answer is probably the Mariners. But in the same breath, what team could kind of entice the Tigers the most with major league ready talent? You're telling me if the Mariners offer, like, I don't know, let's just quickly put a crazy package together. George Kirby, Luis Castillo, maybe they don't want to take that money off you, but let's just say that for now. Let's say George Kirby, Luis Castillo, Kate Anderson, your number one pick from LSU, who fell to you, and one of your stud bullpen guys, and some prospects additional. I mean, is anyone topping that pack? Maybe they even go Logan Gilbert. And you might say, oh, they can't give away Logan Gilbert. For Tarek Skubal, you can. Imagine Tarek Skubal and Brian Wu at the top of your rotation in a playoff series. Come on.
Well, the Mariners going to go all in and re-sign Skubal? Because I think the Mariners fans
that's the bigger question.
They would be holding bated breath. Like you mentioned, if you include Kate Anderson or like a Colt Emerson or Lazaro Montez or even like a Harry Ford, you're like, well, yes, we can take one big swing at the World Series this year coming up. But I think you'd have to sign Skubal in a long-term deal. And I get whoever signs Skubal for that big deal at the end of it. I mean, that's just me. Someone's going to regret the back end of the deal, but what franchise can do that? But maybe they'll be the savior that will keep him out of fucking Los Angeles. You know what I mean? Like maybe that will be the one team. Because as we know, some of these big market teams are just willing to eat that cost at the back end of the deal, or hope you get a Scherzer-like Nationals deal,
right,
or a CC deal with the Yankees. For the majority, though, you're not going to get these free agent pitchers aging well. You're just not. And I think it's there. It comes with the territory. You're paying for what was, not what will be.
My argument would be, if I'm really trying to like find the way Seattle could do it or reason it, the talk so far in Seattle has been like, hey, enjoy this rotation while you can, because there's no way we can pay all of them. So why not, instead of trying to pay all these guys, which you're probably not going to be able to do, deal a couple of them, and Detroit will be like, all right, we're losing Skubal, but we're getting 2 ready-made starters right now. And you get, you pay Skubal instead of trying to pay all these. I don't know. I think they could make sense of it if they do want to be aggressive.
We know they have the money. We know they have the money.
Right,
it's just do they want to? Are they going to be aggressive this offseason? But then when the window closes, are they just going to be like, then we're never paying anybody again? That's the risk you take with these front offices. Like, we're going to dip into the pool,
right,
and then you fall out and say, we're never doing it again.
So Nick in the chat, you are correct or very close. He said 4 for 90 for Naylor is what he saw. The Athletic does have it at 4 years for 92 million. So we're talking 23 million a year. To me, that sounds low. If I'm being honest,
I had him at 4 years, 84 or $21 million based on like-minded deals of. It's a 4-year deal. It's not saying he's not going to get paid again. Like, he could still play after this deal. Obviously, it's not this long-term stability, but you have to take into account he likes playing there. So I think but again, if you're paying Skubal and then Naylor looks at it like, why couldn't you pay me a little bit more then?
All right, give me your number 7 here.
So I'm going to go with, you mentioned this player before. I'm going to go with Framber Valdez, and you mentioned him and what he could bring to the table for a emerging San Francisco Giants team. But we talk about the Baltimore Orioles searching for controllable young core and figuring out who's going to complement them. 5 years, $137 million, $27 million AAV. Framber Valdez joins them there. 31 years old. We talked about the stats. You talked about the stuff that ended at the end of the year during his last couple outings with the Houston Astros. 121 starts over the last 4 seasons, a 3.21 ERA, a ground ball rate that consistently leads the league. He has a workhorse mentality. And you look at some of the lefties in the game, a few of them can match what he brings to the table. He's averaged 190 innings per year since 2021. And even in the campaign last year, as you mentioned, it was a little bit uneven for him. 13-11, a 3.66 ERA, 187 strikeouts, and 192 innings pitched. He did have the durability. He did have the pitch to contact efficiency. And I think that perfectly suits not only Camden Yards with their new dimensions, but the Orioles' elite defense. Yeah. And we talk about their staff and, Kyle Bradish and can Grayson Rodriguez stay healthy? We know they have to have a frontline capable ace. We talk about the workload limits, inconsistency. Some of these guys don't have experience in October. Valdez brings that in spades. He's been there. He has the experience. He's a veteran who can anchor the games, minimize some of the high stress. And I think he instantly becomes a tone setter every fifth day for them. And maybe in a rotation has never had a Cy Young caliber lefty at its peak. Maybe he can return to form. Maybe I'm thinking about it too further, but a change of scenery would be very, very well suited for him. He doesn't carry the mechanics or the profile of guys like Garrett Cole or Max Fried. He won't get paid like that, but he does have some valuable metrics if you compare them with the advanced stats. The ground ball percentage, the inning stability, the postseason pedigree can't be measured another way than if you want to be there, you have to have a guy that's been there. I believe that. But there is some risk with the number, obviously. You look at the immense reward, obviously. I think he's a number one starter in his prime. You might be getting at a below top of market AAV because of the fact of the issues we talked about. The character issues might come into play here. I love the pitch mix he has, the heavy sinker, the curveball. We know the Yankees have a hard time hitting him. So I think we want them to spend. We know Mike Elias wants to grow internally, but they have to spend money eventually, and more fans have to be excited about what they're bringing to the table. We have to deploy some of the gold from this war chest, and I think it starts here. Frontline ace, bring him to the table, 5 years, and let's open it up and try to win a World Series in Baltimore.
They better do something, man. I mean, I love your point about the ground balls kind of fitting that solid infield defense in Baltimore, and they have to. I have a different pitcher going to them a little later in my draft, but the Framber fit absolutely plays. I just think he ends up in San Francisco, but Baltimore is certainly a good fit as well. I'm going to go to my 7th and 8th picks here. So we're heading towards the second half of our drafts, trying to get to 15. I'll try to be a little quicker here as we go, but we can't promise anything. You guys know we like to pour our thoughts in here. So I did have Josh Naylor, but I can't do that. Josh Naylor to the Mariners has been taken. Sure, I could say Josh Naylor to someone else, but I'm not going to do it because I'm with you on that one. So my 7th pick is going to be another name we've heard, Bo Bichette, but I have him staying home. Okay, I think the Bieber taking that option, $16 million, so they don't have to pay him more or go find some other pitching to fill the rotation, is huge. I think all the revenue they have done there in Canada, I mean, we've seen the ratings, the attendance, all this stuff. I think they've done really well for themselves, and I think it is time to repay the fans by keeping Bo here. So Bo Bichette stays in Toronto, stays with his boy Vladdy. It's a happy ending there. After what was a sad ending, and we can see if they can run it back here. Hopefully Bo can get healthy and be healthy all year next year and just carry on from where he was this year, which was great. So that is my number 7 pick here. My number 8 pick, and this one's a little more minor move. I think one of the guys that does get away from Philly, sorry, Nick, if you're listening here in the chat still, JT Realmuto. I have an interesting fit here. I think he stays in the division. I think he goes to a team that desperately needs some veteran leadership. Realmuto, 35 years old, goes to Washington to kind of just help out a young pitching staff and just an overall young group of guys. I know they have Keibert Ruiz there, who was acquired, from the Dodgers years ago, hasn't really worked out or turned out. A lot of guys have turned out and worked out from trades for the Nationals. He has not been one. Maybe playing alongside JT helps a little bit. I'm not saying this is going to be a super long-term deal, maybe a 1 or 2 year stop, but I think the Nationals this offseason, new front office guys there, they need to do something. I'm not saying they're going to put their foot down and get a bunch of superstars, but I do think they need to put some vets around these youngsters in different ways. And I think JT Realmuto, if Philly does let him go, it would be a really nice fit for that youth they have there.
Yeah, I like that pick too, and I think it fits because of the veteran presence, looking to establish it if he wants to continue to play. I'd be curious, Nick, I know Nick's in here, Bird Talks Ball, he's in here, he's always chatting with us. We appreciate your support. be curious of how people in the fan base feel about JT Realmuto. And obviously he was a superstar adjacent player when he went there. It was a big deal, but catchers do age differently. I wonder how people feel about Realmuto. Are a lot of jerseys at Citizens Bank with him on it? Do people feel any sort of type of way if he exits the team, or is going to be like, all right, we'll just fill the need with somebody else? So should be interesting.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, Nick is responding as well.
He says so beloved over here. Yeah, I mean, he's a gritty player. Philly loves the grit.
Yeah, and they would have to replace him. It's not like they have a ready-made guy behind him. So I mean, you have all those rumors about Castellanos is basically either going to be traded or maybe just cut. If they can get, like Nick said in the chat, I credit him. If they can get someone to take Castellanos off their hands, maybe throw something in to sweeten the deal, prospect or something, to get a decent catcher back, a team that has multiple guys. It's an interesting thought because you can't just let Realmuto walk in and kind of just say, all right, let's take this AAA guy that's clearly not ready. So we'll see. But I do think Washington's a nice fit for him.
So I'm going to go with my next two picks here. I'm going to go with the Blue Jays getting another arm. It's going to be Ranger Suarez. Obviously, the Blue Jays came within one swing of a championship. We talked about that at length. 30 years old for Suarez, not the flashiest name in the market, but I think he winds up being one of the more reliable ones when it's all said and done. We saw 5 seasons of him in Philly, a 3.25 ERA, a 17.7 WAR, and he's ranked among the National League's top 10 starters in both ERA and WAR when qualified. His 2025, we saw quietly affirming what Valeries already know. I mean, the efficient contact managers in all of baseball, 12-8, 3.20 ERA, 157 strikeouts, 154 hits allowed. And I think he'd be a really good fit here. I have him being there for 5 years, $105 million, which is $21 million AAV. It's calculated. He's not going to be the 200 inning horse you're looking for to chase, but I think if you get 150 to 170 reliable frames of soft contact, some limited damage bridge between, as we know, Bieber staying there, command first style, and maybe Gausman bringing that strikeout heavy approach, he could slot in pretty there. So, and you can look at the Rogers Center comparison, ground ball rate of 50% plus neutralizes the power, which does play there. And you think about New York and Baltimore's offense and even Tampa at times, it does play pretty perfectly in that division. And the infield defense is going to play there as well, where they're able to really field the ball. We know how good their defense was all year that brought them to the promised land. And this guy's pretty calm when you watch him on the mound. I think you can use that. There's an emotional letdown that comes into this season that will kind of carry with this Toronto team, not just the fans, but don't forget this team. There's going to be a lot of guys that are there that went through this, and to have someone in there, I think it brings a little bit of an edge that fits with John Snyder's culture. He's unassuming. He's professional. I think he's going to go out there and be a good fit.
Sorry, I muted myself because I was eating M&Ms and I forgot to unmute myself. But anyway,
you have a yellow one in there?
These little bags. Maybe I'm a monster, but I just rip them open and just pour them out and put everything in my mouth. It's delicious.
That's the move.
Sorry, that's my last bag down here, so that'll be the last time I make that mistake. But I love the fit here. I don't know if they necessarily need him, but man, if you could add a Ranger Suarez there, that rotation is looking better and better. The Athletic has him at 6 years for $153 million. So not cheap, man. And then some years there too. We'll see. I mean, I love it. I mean, I'm going to be excited for anyone who gets Ranger Suarez. I do think he's another guy who's on his way out of Philly. Dave Dombrowski was pretty clear. He didn't mince words. He said, listen, I can't keep everybody. I think he really wants to keep Kyle Schwarber. I think a couple other guys get away.
Yeah, so my next one here is to your New York Mets, and you already mentioned this guy by name with a reunion in LA, but I have Cody Bellinger going to the Mets here. And
okay.
I like Cody, what he brought to the table for the Yankees. I think the Yankees will definitely be in the mix for him. David Stearns loved players who create some of this elasticity with this roster. And Bellinger, he kind of showed that he's able to play anywhere in the outfield. He's able to go out there and show some strength in center, left. He could play first base at high levels, which gives them a balance that have defensive stability and the athleticism that Alonso's departure does leave behind. And Bellinger, very strong season in the Bronx. 272, 334, 480, 29 home runs, 98 RBIs, 89 runs scored, 152 games, consistent. We didn't see the injury that kind of plagued him with Chicago and with LA at the end there. I have him at 5 years, $145 million, which is a drop in the bucket. It is similar to what George Springer signed with Toronto back in 2021, adjusted for inflation, of course. And then you get Bellinger's glove to add into the fact. I think it does buy Bellinger's age 30 to 34 seasons, which you can look at some of the athleticism still shining here. The Mets window is still open. They have not won the World Series. They didn't make it to the playoffs even this year, but this is a goal for this franchise. Stearns, Cohen, everyone there wants to win the World Series, and this is a win now move. And of course, Soto's superstar consistency. You get Bellinger, add him to the lineup. It makes too much sense. The lineup adaptability, the defensive range. He makes everyone around him better, and I could see him in a Met uniform pretty easily.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that. As a Met fan, I would be pretty excited about that, and I love the versatility, like you mentioned. And the dude's just an athlete. He's a player I admittedly kind of fell out of love with before this year, or maybe before the last 2 years. And then watching him a little more as a New Yorker, seeing him on the TV when I flip over to Yankee games, there's a lot to like, man. And if he ends up on my team, I'd be pretty happy with it. I think that market's going to be big, and we'll see what he gets there. But it'll be an interesting competition for his services there. I think that one might take a while too. I think he's going to let that one play out. It's always interesting to see which guys sign early and which guys sign at the last minute. I could see Cody Bellinger's going a few months from now until he signs, just because I think there's going to be a lot of teams that could use his services, and if they miss out on some guys, Bellinger could be the guy they look at next. All right, so I'm going to you just went to your 8th and 9th, so I believe I'm going to my 9th and 10th. Does that sound right?
It does, yeah.
Okay. All right, so hear me out on this one. I already predicted Kyle Schwarber back to the Phillies. The next prediction I'm going to make, I want it to be clear that I do not think this is also going to happen, but I do feel like one or the other is going to happen. So I'm kind of playing to win a little bit here, all right, and trying to increase my chances a little bit of getting a point somewhere. I have Kyle Tucker going to the Philadelphia Phillies. Now, Again, I'm going to clarify that if I only think it happens if they miss out on Schwarber, if Schwarber walks, or if they actually just prioritize Tucker over Schwarber. I do not think both of those guys are going to be in Philadelphia. All right, but I could see Kyle Tucker as a fit in Philadelphia for sure. And I think there's at least a 50% chance that's where he goes. And again, I think it's a lot of it is based on if Schwarber's back or not. I think similar to how you said, he fits well in Yankee Stadium. I think he could fit really well in Philly as well. Could see him playing along with Bryce Harper there, chip on both of their shoulders. And that could be a sign of like the next generation of the Phillies, because we've kind of talked about like, was that the end of an era, or is it going to continue just missing a couple guys and just feel a little bit different? Is it going to feel a lot different? I think if Schwarber leaves and Ranger leaves and JT leaves and Kyle Tucker walks in the door, it will feel like the dawning of a new era a little bit. So that is my number 9 pick here as a match, Tucker with the Phillies. And then I'm going to go to Dylan Cease for number 10 here. I have Dylan Cease going to my New York Mets. The reason I think this is a fit, there were many times, and you can ask our friends at Divine Sports Gospel, Padres fans, there were many times that Dylan Cease looked extremely unimpressive last year. And Padre fans, I think, packed his bags for them, or for him. With that being said, I know David Stearns has been rumored that he's going to swim in a part of the ocean that he doesn't usually like to go into, as far as trying to sign like big time starting pitchers. He doesn't really like doing that, giving lots of years. We've seen that. The 1-year deal to Luis Severino. Watch the Frankie Montas deal. That is an absolute disaster. Things like that. With that being said, it hasn't worked, and I think he's going to be forced to do something different. Dylan Cease is kind of a little bit of a in the middle point for him, where it's still a little bit of a reclamation project like he likes, but he'll think he can get the best out of him, and his ceiling is much higher than some of these other dudes that David Stearns has signed in years past. So there's something about that fit. It doesn't excite me all that much, if I'm being honest, but I could see David Stearns getting excited about it. So Dylan Cease to the Mets.
Well, Nick's in the chat too. He has Kyle Tucker homering off Dylan Cease in Citizens Bank Park. Mets versus Phillies. I have chills. So your two picks just going against each other. My one pushback at the Tucker thing, and we don't want to make too much of the injury because I felt like he was snake bitten this year. But I mean, the Cubs fans grew very tired of him, and I feel like they're a very forgiving bunch. If he has a season that is hampered by the struggles and the injuries and the things that kind of go down, it could be ugly fast. And I don't think a Trey Turner standing would help. Like, I think he would be.
Well, wait a minute. You had him going to the Yankees. You think Yankee fans are going to be like, it's okay, Kyle. Like, you can deal with
I don't, but
right.
I think that there is a little bit of that risk that you have here. There is a risk for that.
Sure,
and I don't know what is a safe landing spot, because baseball has a lot of passionate fans that are not just be forgiving if you're not living up to. I'm not sure where you had as far as the money there. Do you have him at 9 years, close to that? Like, I don't think you gave an example of it, but like, I mean, we're looking at a $400 million player.
Yeah, I think Tucker is getting anywhere between 9 and 12 years. I mean, listen, Vladdy got 14, right? We saw Soto's crazy deal, 15. Like, I don't think it's crazy to say he ends up at 12. I'm sure most teams don't want to go that long, especially with his recent injury history. But I think nine is probably the minimum for what Tucker's looking at.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where you take a little bit off the top as far as what you can expect from a player. But maybe last year was this one-off season where things didn't go right. But I mean, when things went poorly, if you're watching the Cubs pretty closely this year, it got real ugly really fast, as far as not just the fans reacting, because they tried their best and they're a pretty joyful bunch over there in the north side of Chicago. But man, like, he looked bad for a big portion of the season. He lost himself probably. We're talking about $75-100 million that this player lost. Like, are we looking at that? Probably, right?
Yeah, dude. I mean, the projections before the season, especially right after the Soto deal went down, I always laugh because it's hysterical how quickly Houston reacted to being like, wait, Soto got what? All right, get on the phone and try to trade Kyle Tucker now. Yeah, I mean, the rumors were 500. I think was out there for Tucker pretty quickly.
There was conversation that he was more of a well-rounded player than Soto. Don't forget. I mean, the defense stuff that people were he's, as far as generational hitters go, he's not even close to what Soto brought to the table. But again, as we know, a new season brings new life. Just as we talk with Cody Bellinger and Javi Baez and George Springer, you have a campaign. All of a sudden, you look at these players completely differently, where it's kind of, what have you done for me lately, good and bad?
Yeah, no, you just never know who's going to break out. I mean, Jorge Polanco, who I believe is opting out, is going to have a bit of a market going into this offseason. So you just never know who's going to kind of reinvent themselves a little bit. But all right, so we're going to the last third of our drafts here. Steve is going to go to his, let's see where we are here.
My 10th and
11th.
Yep.
Okay, 10th and 11th there.
So I'm going to take a stab at the international market here, and I have my New York Yankees taking a stab, 6 years, $165 million on Munetaka Murakami. And the Yankees don't often get a second chance to make a first impression to the global stage, but I think Murakami does give them that option here. As we mentioned at length here, this offseason is short on transcendent bats. This is a posting splash that doubles as both the marketing coup that you can have with this international player and really a baseball fit. We have this idea about who can play first base or third. Either way, the Yankees find themselves without a true corner infield who can hit in the middle of the order. 26 years old. He's a left-handed slugger with Japan, 40 home run power, the bat speed, the charisma. He could be an international star in pinstripes. And it's not just about filling a hole. It's about reshaping this lineup. They haven't had a first baseman since like Mark Teixeira. Third base has been a black hole for them as well. So wherever he decides to play, it will be an upgrade for him. I think his swing is tailor-made for Yankee Stadium. 6 years, $165 million. It is, again, as I mentioned with Tucker, if you're spending money on both these guys, it's more an Ohtani adjacent business than a reckless splurge, because what you get on the table, if this player winds up being half of what he's advertised to be, we talked about the Ohtani deal. The Dodgers made that money back up in postseason sales this year. You know, this is a lot to do with the merchandising across 2 continents, an instant fan base in Japan, the appeal. The Yankees at one point were the home destination for a lot of Japanese fans with Hideki Matsui, and then Seattle sort of took that mantle with Ichiro. Now it's a de facto home with they're rooting for the Dodgers unanimously over there with their team and Yamamoto, what he does, and of course Ohtani. The Yankees are a global brand. They're watching the Dodgers dominate that space, and I think defensively we're looking at it as projecting, as I mentioned, this third base, first base hybrid. But I think this is a guy that can fit right in, and like I think he's pretty compelling. It's a message to the fan base that we're here to win, and you don't want another one slip as far as international postings go. They've missed out on a few at this point, and I think the Yankees want to dip their toe back in that market.
Yeah, I'm sure they do. Murakami's interesting. He's kind of a polarizing conversation when you talk to baseball fans. There are people that are drooling at the possibility of having him on their squad, and then there's other people saying he's a strikeout machine and that, you know, it's going to be I don't know, a little bit of Joey Gallo out there. Truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I mean, one of the reasons people get excited about him, 26 years old. People are saying what he did in the NPB most closely resembles what Seiya Suzuki did before signing with Chicago in 2022. There's some, reasons for pause. He did have some injuries coming off the season here, elbow surgery last winter. So that could definitely limit who's comfortable going big for him. But I agree with you. This is something that I do think the Yankees want to get back into that market where they've kind of been dormant for a while. And obviously the Dodgers have absolutely dominated it. But yeah, I mean, the West Coast teams always seem to have a bit of an advantage over signing some of these guys. With that being said, before, I mean, like 10 years ago, the Yankees were the one East Coast team that seemingly did appeal to these guys. It's a little bit of a different world, but that signing makes some sense to me. Again, I think the strikeout rate is probably what gives most people a little bit of concern.
So with my 11th pick here, I'm going to go with the New York Mets on the other side of the bridge with the pitching side of things. And you mentioned David Stearns and his MO. We know that he likes to have the analytical overhaul and look at these pitchers, looking for a little bit of the buy low upside arms. And I wouldn't say this is full buy low, but Michael King, start 2025 season, derailed by nerve and knee injuries. We know what all had to do with his season, why he wasn't the pitcher we saw the year prior. This is a full circle moment from him returning back to New York. Of course, he was the Yankees farmhand and involved in the Soto deal, but being involved now on the other side of it, they desperately need rotation depth, as you mentioned before. You mentioned Dylan Cease. They're probably commanding a bigger asking price. I have him at 4 years, $92 million for Michael King. But before the injuries, he was carrying a 3.10 ERA across 2 seasons as a starter. The elite bat missing metrics, that was there. 95th percentile whiff rate, elite extension, and a devastating sweeper that you look at the opponent average, it's 187 against it. So even if you look at the limited action, 15 starts, 3.144, he showed the same advanced sequencing. He just couldn't stay healthy. So I think it does fit Stearns' front office approach. They've built that model around arsenal diversity. We know that he loves guys that can go throw multiple pitches. And that's really what Michael King epitomizes. He's a guy that can go out there throwing 6 pitches with shape mid-game. He's changing the way he can go out there. He generates soft contact, which we all love. And you can talk about ballpark effects, Citi Field's dimensions, and, we talk about the reducing power. I think this is a calculated balance between upside and also taking into account the durability risk. So it's less than what the top of the market arms. You mentioned Dylan Cease, but we also mentioned Framber Valdez. But I think it's enough to secure Michael King before the market for him surges again if he stays healthy one more year.
Yeah, I mean, I, as a Met fan, would absolutely love to see that signing. Michael King at his best is shut down at times. And I think some people easily forget that for, what have you done for me lately with the injuries this year? But the Mets, I mean, they have a clear need. Starting pitchers that can give you innings. 796 innings pitched by their starters in 2025, 4th worst in Major League Baseball. And clearly their Achilles heel, everybody knows it. Everybody talked about it. What's the biggest reason they missed the playoffs? Shockingly, it was the lack of length, right? A lot of bullpen injuries too, but that coupled with a lack of length from your starters, it's pretty obvious there. The only reason I would say maybe it's not going to be Michael King is because of that injury history, that recent injury history. If Stearns is looking for innings, is he the guy that's going to take the chance on a guy like Michael King there? I mean, I think the ceiling is higher than a lot of these other starting pitchers out there. Again, I would like it. I just wonder his thoughts on that. The Athletic has 3 years for $75 million, so a little different from your projection, but not all that different. Just basically one less year. Little the AAV at 25 mil. So, yeah, I mean, I could see it. Going to my, let's see, I am now at my 11 and 12. So my 11 is a name you brought up already, but I have a different destination. You had Ranger Suarez going to the Blue Jays, correct?
I did.
All right. I do have him going to the AL East, but staying a little closer to Philadelphia. And I think this is the guy the Baltimore Orioles bring in to bolster their rotation. Again, not a whole lot to say here. You already ran down Ranger Suarez. He's had some injuries each year, but they're never like super concerning injuries if you really look at it. Like career altering stuff, super long-term stuff. and he always comes back and is magnificent in the playoffs. A career ERA under 2 in the postseason. Baltimore has a hill to climb to get back in the postseason, but a guy like Ranger Suarez in that rotation certainly helps their cause a little bit. And at number 12, and I'll be honest, I love this prediction as far as like it just makes so much sense. Robert Suarez opted out of his final year with the San Diego Padres. We know the Padres bullpen is pretty full of dogs. Obviously, bring Mason Miller in. So I don't know how motivated they're going to be super aggressive for Suarez, knowing they have all these other guys ready to go. With that being said, I do think Robert Suarez gets away and goes to a team that I don't expect to be super active in free agency, because we've talked about them actually maybe trying to cut some money. Maybe they trade a big guy away, kind of surprisingly. The Texas Rangers need to get that back end of the bullpen. Robert Suarez. So I have two Suarez's here. Ranger Suarez is going to the Orioles. Robert Suarez is going to go to Texas to finally get someone that can pitch the ninth inning whenever they need to. I mean, if you look at the saves leaders for the Texas Rangers last year, it's like, let's see, Sean Armstrong, 9 saves. Robert Garcia, 9 saves. Phil Maton, 3 saves. Dane Dunning, 2. Chris Martin, 2. Caleb Bushley, 1. Like, these guys, no one had more than 9 saves there, and it's a bunch of different dudes that got save opportunities. I still think that team, and we've been saying this for too long, we should probably stop, but I still think that team has the potential to be a playoff team, right? You look at that lineup and guys like Nate Eovaldi and Jacob deGrom now in the rotation, like, how can they not be? Sure up the bullpen. Robert Suarez, I think, is not going to cost you an arm and a leg. I think it'd be a smart signing by Texas.
I love that. And I think Texas is, we mentioned in the beginning of the show was the conversation of these teams that switch, lose our mind here, like the Cardinals and Texas. We haven't talked about them. And I think they're a team that's only a few years away from when they won the World Series. We were high on them in the preseason, at least I was. And you posted something interesting on Twitter, not to pivot too far, about the ballpark metrics and how the ball and the power has been so reduced there. And I was reading the comments about where they were talking about concessions leaving the doors shut. And people were saying it's because of the fact that the airflow is not the same in the ballpark. And who knows, dude? We talk about the salt air metrics in some of these oceanside stadiums, but whatever they were doing a few years ago, bring that back. What are you doing at this point? The power numbers are it's amazing to see how much they've decreased.
One of the strangest stats I've seen, I think it was Lance Brosdowski, who we're going to continue trying to get on the show there, tweeted that out, and to see how different that has changed in the ballpark factor over 3 years is really nuts. Just to finish on Robert Suarez, projection on the Athletic is 3 years, $54 million. Listen, that's not cheap. $18 million a year for a closer, not cheap. But I just think Texas, man, if they're going to have a pretty quiet offseason and just make a couple, a little move here or there, if that's their biggest move, I'm not sure fans are going to be happy. But if they think about how upset they were last year when they didn't really do much to shore up the back end of the bullpen, maybe they can find some happiness in that.
Oh, for sure. So that was your second pick, correct? You had the 2 in a row?
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to go with I believe it's 12th, right?
12 and 13. Yep.
I'm going to go with a reunion of sorts for a reliever, and it's Devin Williams returning to Milwaukee on a short-term deal to reestablish some value. We know how much he had struggled in New York. I can see him going back there, making sense for Milwaukee, who's obviously Devin Williams has familiarity with the organization and had a lot of success there, being the reliever of the year a few years back. I think this makes a lot of sense here. Joining Trevor McGill at the back end of that bullpen, I think you're going to have the ability to have one of the best arms in baseball, reestablish who he is. And listen, man, if you can create a dynamic late inning surge with the duo of the two of them and buy him low at this point, and then you also have, we got Caleb Durbin the deal. And then you also had Nestor Cortez, who, again, Caleb Durbin feels like he's the piece here. Makes sense. Win-win for both. And I think Devin Williams will establish some value and go on from there. I could see it being like a 1-year deal just to reestablish where he is, because the market on him is very, very soured.
Yeah, that's interesting going back to Milwaukee. But you're right. He does need to reestablish that. Well, Nick in the chat had just brought up the Cubs too. Like when we were talking about Robert Suarez, seeing him as a fit there. back into the bullpen, asking like if they have any back end guys. I mean, Brad Keller did some good stuff for them before that, and Brad Keller, I believe, is a free agent himself, so we can't really say he's going to be there for sure. Daniel Palencia, I believe, was the other guy who stepped up pretty well for Chicago. Now, whether they feel like those are the answers, that I don't know. And I think the Cubs always could add more to the bullpen. The bullpen was a strength last year for the first time in forever, if you really look at it. With that being said, again, I've heard rumors that they are not playing at the top of any market, whether it be offense, relief pitching, and possibly starting pitching as well, which is not what you want to hear if you're a Cubs fan as the offseason is just beginning.
So I'm going to go with my 13th pick here, Shota Imanaga. You talked about where he's going, and I'm taking a stab in the dark here. One of my late draft picks. I have him going to the Red Sox, 3 years, $60 million, $20 million AAV. And it feels like you mentioned before, this contract saga feels it's becoming sort of complicated. What happened at the end of the run here in Chicago? It was an uneven sophomore MLB season for him, of course. He's going to have to find a second chapter, and I believe it's going to be in Boston. I think the landing spot perfectly fits both his strengths and potentially a redemption arc. And we're looking at the credibility of the rotation. Garrett Crochet leading the charge there. But we still need guys out there can be durable, throw strikes. Imanaga's 2025 season was definitely a paradox as the ERA climbed from 2.91 to a 3.73. The whip did improve, and his walk rate remained among the best in baseball. And the underlying metrics still point to a pitcher who knows how to command. So I think the problem was just keeping the ball in the ballpark, not keeping runners off the base. So you're probably like pretty risky to send him in Fenway Park, Steve. But I think Boston's front office sees something different in pitchers. And I think they can find a way to have a pitch lab focus on attack angles and some vertical approach and try to reduce that number. He has the pitch mix of the rising four-seamer, the splitter, the sweeping slider. I think if they increase that whiff rate a little bit, neutralize some of that right-handed power in the AL East, I think they can game plan, and they showed the ability to do that. So I think this is a reset and a good platform for them. And I also believe the Red Sox leaning heavily, as you said, with the Yankees piece of it. They also love the global scouting as well, the infrastructure. Masataka Yoshida, Daisuke Matsuzaka, they have an ability to really market some of these players to also the Japanese culture. It's a big deal in baseball to adding at this point a Japanese star into the fold here. Because don't forget, this guy before this year, when things went sour in Chicago a little bit, he was becoming one of the stars of baseball. Understated signing for them when they first went there, but he became this guy people rallied around. And if you go to Wrigley Field, there was a lot of Shota jerseys out there. So I think if he adjusts to Fenway's unique dimensions, that home run per 9 could go back to league average, and then he can quietly become one of the more efficient pitching signings, and it would be a big get for Boston.
Yeah, I mean that's issue number one for Shota. The home runs per 9, so concerning, and it blew up in the second half. So maybe there's something that can be fixed there, and teams see it and are excited about the opportunity to get their hands on him. Boston, I will say, I do believe they are adding to that rotation. As well as, I think Boston's going to be one of the more aggressive teams this offseason as well. We've mentioned a couple that there are rumors that certain teams are going to be super aggressive and try to build on what they did in 2025. I do think it's Boston. Whether it's Shota or not, I don't know. I said before when Shota came up, I have zero read on where he's going to end up right now, so I'm not even going to try there. But I will say this next guy, and this is now my 13th pick, so I have 3 left here before we conclude our draft. This guy looks like he could be a Red Sox, and to be honest, I wouldn't be shocked if he ended up in Boston. They're thinking about it now as you talk about Boston. It makes some kind of sense, but I did not go with Boston for this one. I have Brandon Woodruff staying in the NL Central and going to help the St. Louis Cardinals try to get his groove back there, stay healthy, and also try to help the Cardinals do a little better in the rotation. St. Louis's offense, if you look at some of the numbers month by month last year, there was times of the season they were pretty good offensively. There really were. Their problem was starting pitching. I mean, day by day, if you look at who their starter is, it's just, for the most part, other than Sonny Gray, a bit uninspiring. All right, whether it be Miles Michaelis or Palante out there. I don't know. Anytime you look at, I know Liberatore looked good in the beginning of the year, kind of faded down the stretch. I just think, I know the rumors are more so, they might look to trade Sonny Gray. I don't know, man. Like, why don't you keep Sonny Gray around? He's been great for you. Add to the rotation and try something here as far as going for it. St. Louis 4.67 ERA from their starters last year, good for sixth worst in the league, and it's not like they got unlucky. 4.72 expected ERA, so they're right there. They basically got what they were supposed to get. So I think Brandon Woodruff, veteran pitcher, been there, done that. Similar to what you said with a guy like Devin Williams needing to go reestablish his value. Brandon Woodruff has had a litany of injuries. He looked pretty good when he finally came back last year and then got hurt again. Unfortunately for him, was not able to make it back for the playoffs. They did an in-game interview with him during one of those playoff games, and he openly said, he's like, I'm hoping if we can make it to the World Series, I'll be ready for that. But obviously, LA kind of squashed that idea pretty quickly. So Brandon Woodruff to the St. Louis Cardinals, which would anger Brewers fans quite a bit, I believe. Division rival there. And then for number 14, all right. So Eugenio Suarez, we haven't talked about him. It's very interesting how he was the belle of the ball for the trade deadline, and his value has seemingly diminished pretty significantly. I know obviously he had the huge grand slam moment in the ALCS, which was a great moment, but overall his time in Seattle was a extreme struggle. There is one team out there who it just seems this is their kind of signing. They could use the power for sure. Third base has been a little vacant for them because of one man named Anthony Rendon just not playing baseball. So I see Eugenio Suarez going to another team in the AL West, the Los Angeles Angels. Unfortunately, I see it as one of those signings that just doesn't work out. And how many times have we said that for the Angels? But I think they could be tempted by Eugenio Suarez.
I like it, and it is interesting to talk about because, like, I feel like, as you mentioned, bell of the ball was a good way to put it, but everything was focused on where Suarez would go. We could potentially be talking about a reunion with Seattle, and it just doesn't feel like there's a fit there. And I think he is the perfect candidate to kind of take the money and go elsewhere because we know these teams that are a black hole are still looking to put fans in the seats, and Suarez does fit there. And I guess, yeah, ask the question, did he get addicted or loving of the winning culture of what they're building in Seattle, or is he willing to forego that to stability?
I just don't think Seattle's going to be interested, to be honest. I
No,
don't know.
I'm just saying, but I'm like opening up the other teams. Like, does he want to win?
Oh, I see.
Does it matter to him?
I got
Like,
you.
I don't see Seattle wanting him either, especially for what it's going to cost. They look at the price tag, turn around, and say no, thanks. They can find his value elsewhere. I'm going to go with the St. Louis Cardinals as well for I believe this is my 14th pick, right?
Yeah, you got these are your final two here. Final two.
I'm going to go with a guy who struggled. He was a deadline acquisition. Willie Castro went to the Cubs, and everyone's like, oh, that's a nice fit. Utility player. I have him go to the St. Louis Cardinals. I think obviously there's a priority for starting pitching over there as well. But I think they can get him at a reasonable cost because of the struggles we saw in the post Cubs resume that he put on the table. And I think the positional versatility could be useful. The infielders shifting. This Cardinals team is looking to reestablish an identity. But I believe that this is something that's pretty reasonable. Maybe it's a 1 year, maybe up to 2 year with a club option or something like that to establish value, as I mentioned with Devin Williams. And I think for the Cardinals, like, they have to do something. And this is a player who, before being traded, he was, again, one of those guys, not bell of the ball, but a guy that everyone was excited about what he could bring to the table. He was ice cold for the Cubs, but everyone was expecting way more, and that probably reduced the price. But I could see the Cardinals being in and expecting to do more what he did in the beginning of the season with the Twins.
Yeah, I mean, I could see that too. The Cardinals are just such I guess unpredictable is the word going into this offseason for them. Kind of new shake up in the front office as well. Rumors about Sonny Gray being traded. Rumors about them even looking to trade Wilson Contreras, which seems to come out of left field. Obviously, trying to let Arenado go elsewhere, which they weren't able to figure out last year. So it is a bit of a turning point here. So it really will be interesting to see if they just kind of punt and wait till next year to be aggressive, or if they do make some of these deals, even if they're deals just a little bit around the edges.
We got Nick in the chat. He says Suarez should just go to the Rockies and eke out a Hall of Fame career at 400 home runs. There's something exciting about the Rockies, man. I understand they're not ready and pitching is their issue. There's a lot of great young talent. I would love to have a Rockies beat writer on here to discuss. They're not ready to win for the next 5 years, but there's a lot of really fun talent to discuss there.
Well, they haven't found their new GM or whatever it is, the president of baseball operations, whatever they're looking for right now, right? And there's rumors that certain people are interested that are like what the Rockies have needed for a long time is somebody that comes in with a very unique game plan as far as how to win in Colorado with what the settings are, right? And there's some interesting rumors out there. We'll save that for another day as far as you're right. We should look to get somebody on that covers them to give us a perspective because a lot of times
to me.
These bottom feeding teams, like they get buried, but there are plenty of things to discuss. And I'm sure their fans would like to hear that discussed as well.
Yeah, I'm the captain of the Hunter Goodman fan club. So, I mean, I started the Ernie Clement one during the postseason, but Hunter Goodman was the guy I followed all year. Great addition to my fantasy roster. But I'm going to go my 15th pick here. Nice value for me here. 5 years, $150 million at $30 million AAV. It's Dylan Cease returning to Chicago, but it's to the Cubs. I think Dylan Cease returning to Chicago does feel practical for them. At 30 years old, you mentioned the numbers. I don't have to put too much love on it because you did discuss the 5 straight 32 start seasons, 5 consecutive 200 plus strikeout campaigns. He was volatile last year. We mentioned the numbers in San Diego, 4.55. This is a guy who does at his best have elite fastball spin metrics. The slider whiff rate does put him in the top 10% of starting pitchers, but that's cherry picking the numbers. We know that this rotation, you mentioned before, the rotation need is urgent. We talk about the window opening and wanting to compete. Justin Steele is steady, but he's not overpowering. We mentioned Shota. If he's not going to be there, there needs to be a replacement. And the rest of the rotation, you have to figure it out. I mean, you haven't had the stability there. And Wrigley Field also represents maybe a quieter, better baseball fit for C. San Diego did not feel enchanted with his performance at all. And the cold early season conditions and wind patterns could maybe play to his strengths and get him off to a good start where like maybe it suppresses the home runs. His ERA in San Diego was inflated from the beginning last year. And I think the signing, as I mentioned, Jed Hoyer's front office, they're done patching rotations together. Maybe Dylan Cease is a guy that you take a risk on 5 years, $150 million. So this is where his professional story began. I mean, he was drafted by the Cubs, if I have it correct, in 2014, and then traded to the White Sox in that Jose Quintana deal back in 2017. So now he's returning as a finished product. Like, here I am, dude. Cease to the Cubs feels like a fit to me.
Yeah, I mean, again, similar to what we said about the Orioles earlier, I think you and I are in agreement that the Cubs do need to make some kind of move at maybe not the very top of the rotation, but like, a number 2-3 guy. My pick earlier was Zach Gallen. Dylan Cease makes a lot of sense as well. And I think a few of these guys, like the Dylan Ceases, Zach Gallens, Ranger Suarez's of the world, I feel like you could put them in a bag, shake them up, and I don't know, the locations could be different, but very similar guesses to where some of these guys go. I'm blanking here because I'm writing down your picks so we can just run through them at the end. Who was your 14? So Cardinals, right?
Yeah, Willie Castro.
Okay, Willie Castro to the Cardinals here. All right, so Castro to the Cardinals, Dylan Cease to the Cubs. All right, so I believe I only have one pick left here. So we're going to my number 15. All right, this is my most out there one. I felt like I needed one that's kind of out there, so I saved it for my 15th here. Lucas Giolito opted out of his deal with the Red Sox here, looking to see what he can get on the open market. Obviously, some rocky health, but like a lot younger than I thought he was. I thought this dude was at least mid-30s, 31 years old. Okay, and he's had a lot of success when healthy in different places. Even in Boston, at times he looked really, really good. The fact that he got hurt before the postseason really, really hurt their chances against the Yankees in that series. The news came out right before that series started and changed the feel of everything, and obviously loomed large in that game 3. So anyway, I think this could be the weird one. The Athletics last year shocked the world and signed Luis Severino to a hefty deal to pitch for them. If you look at the A's, again, kind of a forgotten team, their offense is fun as hell. Nick Kurtz, right? Jacob Wilson, Shea Bangaliers, right? Just go up and down, like fun offense. On any given night, they can just bash you to death. The starting pitching is obviously, leaves a lot to desire. 4.85 ERA from their starters, which is worse than the Cardinals I mentioned before, fourth worst in the league. I think maybe they try to do it again, and they're not going to do a whole lot during the offseason, in my opinion, but maybe dangle it. I mean, listen, man, you traded Mason Miller to kind of, get this great prospect. You have this great offense. Put a little bit of a veteran pitching staff together, and it might be some fun. The hard part, and the reason I doubt my own pick a little bit, is because we saw how much Luis Severino absolutely hated pitching there last year. So there's probably some veteran starters where it's like, I don't care how much money you give me, I'm not going there. But Giolito is interesting because the guest by The Athletic has him taking a 3-year, $57 million deal. Shorter deal because of the rocky health, even though he's only 31 years old. If the A's say, hey, we're not going to do a lot, we're mostly going to stay status quo, but let's try to get this dude, and we'll give him more than that, right? We'll blow the other offers out of the water and maybe convince him, kind of like they did with Severino last year. I could see it. And Giolito's just the one I'm picking. There's a few other guys I thought about sending to the Athletics as well in the same fashion, but for my last pick will be a little weird. Lucas Giolito going to the Athletics. If I get that one, I'm celebrating because that one's a long shot.
You might be able to get double points for that because the Severino signing, although he got paid, don't feel bad for him. Like he was pouting the whole year. So if you're Giolito, you watch the lack of major league ballpark accommodations, all of that. I'm sure these players do speak to each other, but I mean, listen, if he's going to get paid double what he's going to get paid on the open market somewhere else, how do you not convince yourself to just do it? It is Sacramento. Right. It's still California. It's still beautiful weather. So, but it's a couple years since we're going to get to Vegas, and that athletic situation hasn't been talked about a lot because we had all the great stuff for baseball, but there's still a lot of underlying negativity of uncertainty that does exist because yes, the move is happening to Vegas, or at least we think so. It just feels like it's so uncertain, more uncertain than we've even thought. And last year, I understand they weren't competitive to the level and the offense, did its thing and they were exciting. I mean, it's unacceptable to have baseball in a minor league park like that. And that's just that's simple facts.
Yeah, I mean, but listen, when they announced the move to Vegas, there was these reports and everyone rolled their eyes that, hey, we're going to start ramping up as we get closer to Vegas, right? Sure. The offense has become fun. They did lock up a few guys, right? Rooker, I think Butler too, right? Didn't they
Butler
they
was
locked
too,
up Butler?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they did the Severino deal. So if they want to keep that rolling like they said they were going to, they might look for something like this. I just want to give, before we sign off here, I had some extras that we didn't get to, and they were just in case others got taken before mine. And these don't count towards my drafts. They will not give me any points if they happen, but I thought they were interesting just to mention. So others that did not, they got cut, let's say. Miguel Andujar back to the Reds. He was great for them once they acquired him. Keep him. I had Michael King staying with the Padres. Luis Arias I had going to the Pirates, which made me laugh because I just felt I feel like his market's going to be small, and the Pirates are going to take advantage of it and be like, hey, look, we signed a name that you guys know, and it's probably
batting
not
titles,
exactly,
dude. He's got hardware with them too. So.
I understand, but it's probably not what they're looking for. But I can see them pulling something like that. I have Gleyber Torres staying with the Tigers, Ryan O'Hearn staying with the Padres, Harrison Bader going to the Angels, worst defensive team in the league. Get some defense. I know they have that dude. I'm going to butcher his name, Teodosio or something like that played for them at the end and is a great defender, but he can't really hit, or at least hasn't shown he can. So I don't know if that's the answer. Get Bader out there. And then Ramon Laureano also staying with the Padres. So those are the ones that cutting room floor.
For sure. And the only one I had on here, I mean, you took my Zach Gallen piece on here. I had Tetsuya Mai, the Nippon player that was coming from Japan. I had him with the Giants. 5 years, $82 million. He's entering at 28, and he could be the next wave of these right-handers. We understand the numbers. He pitched with the Cebu Lions last year, 1.92, third straight season with an ERA under 2.50. How much do you value those numbers compared to MLB? But I can see the Giants taking the list if he does get posted.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, that is always the conversation is how do we compare these to Major League Baseball? It's not exactly apples to apples all the time. But there's been some guys that have come over here kind of undervalued. We always think of it as oh, this guy was overvalued. We should have known. But I mean, even Shota Imanaga, man, he came out great for the Cubs and it wasn't super hyped and didn't get the money that some of these other guys did. So sometimes it's a surprise in the other direction.
So as we do say goodbye for the night, we appreciate everyone that hopped in the chat. Devin, I just want to bring, to your table, and we'll have a further conversation. We did see yesterday or 2 days ago, we had the Hall of Fame unveiling that 8-player contemporary baseball era committee ballot with some big names on it, with Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens headlining, but Carlos Delgado, Jeff Kent, Don Mattingly, Dale Murphy, Gary Sheffield, and Fernando Valenzuela being on this ballot, where if they do receive 75% of the ballots cast by the 16-member committee to become part of the 2026 Baseball Hall of Fame class, they are going to be announced this fall. So we can have a further conversation down the line, but just want to put it on everybody's radar about that. I think there is a strong contingent of people that believe that Bonds and Clemens have a legitimate shot of being voted into the Hall of Fame. I mean, Don Mattingly getting another shot is a huge deal too, as a Yankee fan.
Yeah, there's a pretty good case for all those guys. I'm not a Sheffield guy. Some people might kill me for that. I don't see Sheffield. I know there's some numbers that say he is. Something about Sheffield, I feel like is just a notch below. That's just me. The other guys, I mean, you can
Delgado
make
feels like a Hall of Famer to me. Delgado does.
I'd have to really dig into the numbers there. Obviously, I'm a Delgado fan. Loved him on the Mets. I'd have to look at those. He's the other guy I was going to say. I'm not sure if he quite reaches that. But the other guys you mentioned, I mean, it's a tough argument if you're making me pick two. But I do hope Bonds and Clemens. I know the steroid stuff. I believe they're a huge part of the story of baseball, and I think they need to be in there. Tell the whole story if you want to. A little disappointed Keith Hernandez not on it. I know you're only doing 8. I hope he gets on there at some point. The contemporary thing, I'm glad that ballot exists to get some of these guys that maybe, have fallen off the ballot and maybe deserve another look, especially as things kind of change with how we vote.
Yeah, and the one thing I will say is, like, if Bud Selig is enshrined in the Hall of Fame, how do you not have Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens? He is complicit in everything that went on during that era of baseball. And yes, the numbers are inflated. You can look at Delgado's numbers and you can look at Sheffield's numbers, 500 home runs for Sheffield. You can make the case that these guys were involved in things, but it was part of the game. It was the full ecosystem. This wasn't a one-off. It was insidious across. And if you have to mention it on their plaques or where they're enshrined, the fact that you have an incomplete history of baseball without Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens for what they were. Barry Bonds is walking around as the greatest baseball player that has ever lived, and he's not in Cooperstown. If you go in as a novice and explore Cooperstown, Barry Bonds isn't there. And to me, he's the greatest baseball player. He is the bar of baseball. And yes, it did it under nefarious ways, but Bud Selig made his living restoring baseball post-lockout because of the steroid era. And everything has to be considered in real time, and the context is king, as always.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are always on the same page with this one. And I always say, like, listen, there's a lot of guys that we have no idea were using steroids as well, and they didn't do the crazy things that Clemens and Bonds did. So in a way, some of it was even, and those guys were the ones that came out on top. I don't think it was right, but it's time to get those guys in. And if we start with Bonds and Clemens, go ahead. I'd be all for it.
So we appreciate you guys hopping in the chat again. Nick was in here all day, and there's a couple other people in here. I see your sister was in here agreeing that M&Ms are delicious as well.
They are. They're delicious.
And then we had a Red Sox fan in here. Hopefully we scratch a little bit of the offseason itch. But as Devin mentioned, we will not be stopping the offseason coverage. We may be back later this week, potentially with some guests. We have some things in the docket ready to load out for everybody because baseball never sleeps. If you want to follow us on Instagram and on Twitter at Tablesetters Pod, where you can find us. If you're so kind and you enjoyed our show, the offseason coverage and beyond, leave a 5-star review. Tell your friends about it. This is how we get discovered, how we trend in Denmark, in Finland, and Japan. We want to trend in the United States. Leave a 5-star review. Good pods, wherever you can find us. We just want to continue to cover baseball in a lot of good ways. We are international, but we love our domestic fans as well.
Yeah, America, we haven't forgotten about you, but shout out to Finland, number 6 in Finland a couple days ago.
Hell yeah. So again, we appreciate you guys. Hopefully you're enjoying the offseason and settling in from the World Series, but the coverage will not stop. But until that time, we will talk to you after a while. And as always, happy baseball.
In a year that has been so improbable, The impossible has happened.